Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by author Jiao Chao Mo. Chapter 126-150. Chapter 126, The Purpose of the Sam-Khan Craftworld Eldar. Traina System, Capital City Traina. After Ning Lu listened to Howard's report on the process and situation of conquering the two-star systems, he shifted his attention to the Eldar captives. Eldar captives, what information have you extracted from them so far? Father, ever since they were captured, no matter how much we tortured them, they said nothing. Up until now, no information has been extracted. Howard said, operating a data slate to display the ambush and interrogation footage. Ning Lu noticed in the ambush footage that more than a dozen red armored warriors, seated in streamlined flying vehicles, were speeding towards them. The red flying vehicles had blade-like wings extending from both sides of their lower abdomen. His gaze was then drawn to the flying motorcycles and the white emblem on the Eldar face masks. The serpentine shape was not a common snake from ancient Terra, but rather the cosmic serpent from ancient Eldar mythology. Red armor, Windrider motorcycles, cosmic serpent emblem. Sam-Khan Craftworld Eldar. Ning Lu knew that in ancient Eldar mythology, the serpent was considered the only creature that existed simultaneously in both the material and spiritual worlds. It is said that the serpent knows all past and present secrets. Sam-Khan means, seeking enlightenment. In the ancient Eldar dictionary, snake and secret knowledge mean the same thing and can both be described by the word Sa'im. Therefore, they use the serpent as their emblem, proudly emblazoned on their motorcycles, Eldar tanks, and flying vehicles. After Ning Lu confirmed that the Eldar were from Sam-Khan, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. Open black lens bracket Sam-Khan primarily operates in the Pacific Star region on the western side of the galaxy. Why would they come to the Misty Star region, close black lens bracket? Take me to see those captives. Ning Lu spoke, and the arbitrator lord led him to the prison. He named himself Arbitrator at Sequence 9, and the warriors of the first battle group had a golden scale painted on their right shoulder pad. Along the way, Howard spoke. The tech sergeant designed specialized shackles for restraining the Eldar, which use anti-psyker materials and also have a function to suppress their cellular activity. Ning Lu looked at them through the glass of the confinement room. 6 tall Eldar, their face masks already torn off, revealing their pointed chins and ears. Their postures and gestures exuded an unsettling beauty and an alluring sense of the alien, that peculiar aura unique to the Eldari Eldar. Ning Lu's pupils constricted, and his consciousness spread towards the 6 Eldar. Hiss. Before his consciousness could even touch the red door, he heard a sound like a giant serpent hissing. Ning Lu also felt a black chain wrapped around the door. He knew that it was the blocking effect of the anti-psyker material added to the shackles. Ning Lu did not let Howard remove the shackles, giving the Eldar a chance. Black and white light flickered in his eyes, and psychic energy attached to his consciousness, slipping through the gaps in the chains. The Eldar's naturally acute senses made them simultaneously feel as if a black hand was reaching out to them. They all turned their heads at the same time, looking towards the glass. The glass window was one way, and the Eldar's naturally sharp eyes were still blurry. They only vaguely sensed a powerful consciousness, a consciousness even stronger than a shaman's. It was like a giant black palm, or a black ocean. They knew that a powerful psyker was probing their minds. The 6 Eldar quickly used their unique Eldar mental techniques to construct a mental defense. After Ning Lu broke through the chains, he immediately felt the red door grow thicker and larger. A certain light and shadow flashed from the Gene Seed Primarch, and his consciousness, like a black spear, pierced towards the red door. Invisible ripples spread, and blood flowed from the ears and mouths of the 6 Eldar. The Order Shadows, who inherited the keen perception of their Gene Father, simultaneously had a premonition. They sensed a confrontation unfolding in the non-material world, and the Gene Seed Primarch was victorious. Ning Lu's consciousness simultaneously permeated the minds of the 6 Eldar. In their minds, it was a world more complex and colorful than that of humans. Their keen perception was not just more acute senses, but also on a spiritual level. The Gene Seed Primarch found an identical image in the mental ocean of the 6 Eldar. A figure holding a peculiar Eldar staff, its top triangular, a horizontal bar in the middle, and the lower part resembling 2 branches of a tree. His gaze was deep, and he spoke in the Eldar language. The threads of fate have changed, and we must investigate the reason. When the Eldar shaman spoke, his tone was profound, as if from another world. Ning Lu continued his search along the captured mental image. He saw these Eldar go to Vigilance Star, lost in thought. Open black lens bracket Vigilance Star is crucial in the prophecies of the Sam Khan shaman, which is why that shaman came here, close black lens bracket. Then, Ning Lu saw that the 6 Eldar were dispatched to investigate the Traina system. Finding nothing more, he withdrew from the minds of the 6 Eldar and said to Howard, "Meet me in my office in 15 minutes. Ning Lu then went to the temporary office the arbitrator lord had prepared for him, heading to the disordered country. He first arrived at the 3rd level. The space monkey cubs grew rapidly, now as large as their adult kin. As soon as Ning Lu saw him, he felt a mysterious connection with the space monkey in front of him. This feeling was clearly perceptible in his spirituality. He came beside the space monkey, his hand gripping its shoulder, the touch a soft sensation of orange-red fur. The next instant, he flashed and appeared in the 1st level of space. After retrieving the potion materials for the Inquisitor, he sent the potion formula, including the materials and shape, to the space monkey. "Prepare this potion." Seeing the space monkey pick up the materials and climb onto the furnace, Ning Lu pondered to himself. Open black lens bracket It is safe for the space monkey to prepare potions. The back door, that mixes biological genes and psychic technology can only be opened by the Old Ones. In the Harud myth, the last Old One named Qua left the galaxy 500,000 years ago. He escaped to another unobservable dimension, continuing to create new races using plastic, resin, and paint materials. Even if he returns to the galaxy, he will not be able to extend his claws into the disordered country. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu had already decided that the space monkeys dedicated to preparing potions would not be allowed outside once they entered the disordered country, ensuring no one would have the opportunity to pull any tricks. A moment later, Ning Lu received the white and gold mixed gelatinous Inquisitor potion. Returning to the real world, a moment later, Howard entered the private office and took the potion from his hand. Knowing that he had received a new blessing, he directly tilted his head back and drank it, lightning-like brilliance flashing in his eyes. After the Inquisitor reigned in the overflowing potion power, he bowed and said, "I will certainly make good use of the power you have bestowed upon me to pry open the Eldar's mouths. Their presence here is related to Vigilance Star, south of the Traina system on the star map. Find a way to locate it and control that world." Ning Lu knew that Vigilance Star not only contained Blackstone, which had special strategic significance for containing chaos, but also many other good things. A fortress-class energy shield STC capable of covering an entire hive city and providing protection, and the Claw of Void, doomsday weapon, a legacy of the dark age of technology in Vigilance Fortress. Vigilance Star's moon, Soul Siphon Star, was also a world rich in minerals. For this, a war with Sam Khan was worth it. In addition, arrange for the tech sergeant to research the Eldar motorcycles to improve our own motorcycles. Although the Imperium during the Great Crusade still possessed low-altitude anti-gravity technology for motorcycles, there was a huge gap compared to the Eldars. The Eldar's stylish and elegant motorcycles could maintain nimble maneuverability while traveling at high speeds, astonishing and envying the Mechanicus. Sam Khan was especially famous for its Windrider motorcycles. Every Eldar was a Windrider rider, even shamans from other craft worlds who wouldn't use such vehicles were no exception. After Howard departed with his orders, Ning Lu received a report from the astropath that they had received orders from Bucephalus, from the Emperor himself. Chapter 127, Preparations for the Gene Seed Primarch celebration on Terra. The message relayed by the astropath was consistent with Ning Lu's expectations. He was the first to recover a lost night world and incorporate it into the Imperium, which greatly pleased Huang Laohan, who immediately recognized its political propaganda value. The order he gave Ning Lu was to return to Terra, where Imperial Regent Micardo had prepared a grand celebration for him. Of course, Huang Laohan also considered the Gene Seed Primarch's unique hobby and promised Ning Lu another opportunity to enter his private treasury as a reward. After Ning Lu finished reading the message relayed by the astropath, it was as if something within him melted. The digestion progress of the bribers potion reached a new node. Ning Lu nodded in satisfaction. His personal conquest of the Daxos twin star system had not been in vain. Not only had the potion significantly digested, but he had also, as expected, received another chance to select treasures. The Gene Seed Primarch immediately gave orders for the fleet to head to the nearest Mandeville point, targeting the solar system. Chief Apothecary Mitchell and Harvest Priestess Malina did not accompany him. They boarded a ship bound for the Tricon system. Among the Legion warriors not yet sent to their respective chapters, the Order Shadows who were not chosen to accompany him to the solar system also departed the Void Hunter. They would join their respective chapters and continue to expand the Legion's sphere of influence. During the voyage, Ning Lu, seated on the command throne, inquired about the progress of the task he had assigned Arsena Dun. How is the research into occult languages progressing? The reader was silent for a few seconds, then organized his thoughts. My lord, Thomas and I have made some discoveries after our discussions. In the process of civilizational development, various races will serendipitously yet inevitably discover certain words possessing mystical power. The serendipity lies in the discovery process, while the inevitability stems from most races' understanding of the universe, which often extends beyond the scientific. The unknown compels them to explore hidden mysteries from a supernatural perspective. Ning Lu tapped his fingers lightly, listening to the original body servant continue. I sent requests to the lords of various chapters, and they all cooperated with my efforts. He and I separately collected, compiled, and analyzed data from numerous Xenos races and civilizations, searching for those special words. Currently, we have made good progress. I have found 51,940 words from the languages of 29 races, and their analysis is now complete. After reporting the progress, the reader outlined the next step. I believe this trip to Terra will yield significant gains. To my knowledge, besides High Gothic, there are various languages from different civilizations, from which I expect to gain insights. I believe by the time we return, I should be able to create some fragmented words, and then attempt to combine them into sentences. Well done, continue along your current line of thought. Ning Lu encouraged him. Meanwhile, under the command of Imperial Regent Micardo, various Imperial departments began intensive preparations for the Gene Seed Primarch's arrival. The populace, upon receiving news that the Gene Seed Primarch was about to arrive on Terra, cheered with excitement. The Emperor had ended the warlord rule on Terra and initiated the magnificent, Great Crusade. One lost human world after another, lost for thousands of years, was recovered, making them feel humanity's resurgence and its destiny to become the dominant species in the galaxy. Many Imperial citizens still remembered the grandeur of the return ceremony for the first son of the Emperor, Horus Heresy, 15 years prior, a celebration that lasted an entire month. Now, Imperial Regent Micardo announced that the celebration welcoming the second Gene Seed Primarch back to Terra would also last a month. The people of Terra, burdened by the heavy work of the Great Crusade, were also given good news. They would receive a 3-day holiday starting from the day the Gene Seed Primarch arrived on Terra. For 4 whole months, the biggest topic among the Terra populace was the impending arrival of the 11th Gene Seed Primarch. As they inquired about every piece of news concerning the Gene Seed Primarch from those around them, the Imperial propaganda machine began to spin rapidly, and Ning Lu's achievements were widely publicized. Gene Seed Primarch Ning Lu, before being recovered by the Emperor, had already unified the entire Vostronia star system. He crushed Xenos pirates, built exemplary hive cities, and led the people of the system to prosperity. Quote. In 813, Genseed Primarch Ning Lu discovered the Tricon system, expelling the evil Xenos entrenched there. The Imperium gained 5 new habitable worlds with beautiful environments and rich mineral resources. In 814, Genseed Primarch Ning Lu discovered the lost human colony, the Daxos Twin Star System. He personally met with the Vixtrix family, and the First Night World pledged allegiance to the Imperium. In Terra's Vox channels, the Genseed Primarch's deeds were continuously broadcast, increasing over time. In places like Hive City parks and taverns, official affiliates or keen civilian entertainers vividly recounted his legendary tales to the public. Each storyteller's version had more or less variations. According to incomplete statistics from the Imperial Propaganda Department, there were 33,911 different accounts of the Genseed Primarch's duel with the Night King in the Daxos Twin Star System alone. The populace discussed with relish which version was true, constantly debating it. Listen to me, the Genseed Primarch swung his sword, and the 10-meter-tall Night Mech was cut in half at the waist. The truth is, the Genseed Primarch leapt up and kicked the Dark Soul's glory in the chest, and the Night Mech crashed heavily to the ground, reportedly flattening a mountain peak. No, everyone else is wrong. The Genseed Primarch didn't even lift a finger. He just looked at the Night King, and he couldn't bear the pressure, kneeling to pledge allegiance to the son of the Emperor. At the Internal Affairs meeting, Micardo's aged face showed a hint of a smile after hearing the report. He methodically issued orders. The starport must be ready. Prepare a separate berth for the Genseed Primarch. The music and etiquette of the honor guard must be flawless. Security forces must ensure that the public, eager to catch a glimpse of the Genseed Primarch along the avenue leading to the Imperial Palace, does not descend into chaos and prevent overcrowding and stampedes in time. The banquet department must ensure that the food and drinks are primarily Vostronia flavored, and also prepare other flavors from various cultures. As always, Micardo meticulously attended to every detail of the Genseed Primarch's return, issuing orders to each responsible personnel. Days passed, and in November of 816, Micardo received news that the Genseed Primarch's Void Hunter had emerged from the Pluto vicinity, through the Stargate built during the Golden Age, the Gate of Hades. On the 11th day of November, the Void Hunter arrived at Terra's starport. The celebration welcoming the Genseed Primarch's return officially began. Chapter 128, Celebration. Ning Lu boarded the shuttle designated for the Genseed Primarch, accompanied by Arsena Dun. 12 Order Shadows, one from each of the 11th Legion's 12 battle groups, stood as exemplary representatives of their respective groups and were the most outstanding Astartes among the Honor Guard members for this trip to Terra. Clad in armor and crimson cloaks, they stood behind the Genseed Primarch. Ning Lu stood before the observation window, gazing down at humanity's homeworld below. The planet beneath him was entirely different from the blue planet in his memory. If described by color, it was closer to gray. The oceans had vanished without a trace, countless steel hive cities rising from the desolate land, piercing the clouds. Among the numerous structures, the most dazzling was the colossal psychic lighthouse, the Astronomicon, which served as the foundation for Imperial ships to conduct warp travel. This massive device was essentially a focusing mechanism, projecting immense psychic power into the warp. Even if the Emperor was not on Terra, the warp was not bound by physical laws, allowing him to guide the signals released by the Astronomicon with his powerful psychic abilities while simultaneously leading the fleet. Ning Lu's eyes flickered with dual shadows of light and darkness as he gazed at the brilliant beam of light, invisible to ordinary people. Gradually, his subspace insight discerned a familiar golden light within the rainbow beam. That light was like a conduit leading to high heaven, gathering immense power. Open black lens bracket. When I met Huang Laohan, I did not see traces similar to this brilliant beam in the golden light he emitted. It was only after arriving at Terra that I could perceive their connection through the Astronomicon. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Open black lens bracket. Huang Laohan's psychic power is too strong. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, the dual shadows of light and darkness in his eyes gradually faded, and he looked towards the structure even taller than the Astronomicon, the Terra Imperial Palace. It occupied a vast area, a city sprawling across an entire landmass, breathtakingly grand, like an ancient marble scab on the Eurasian continent, stretching from the arid eastern coastline to the empty western ocean. The stones used in its construction originated not only from Terra but also from the Moon, Mars, and numerous moons orbiting the gas giants of the solar system. There was even marble from other star systems, hauled thousands of miles back to Terra from rediscovered and reconquered worlds. Polished, refined, processed, conceived in the architects' minds, brought to reality by the laborers' hands, and made a fortress beneath the soldiers' feet. It was a towering complex of countless Gothic buildings. It was not yet complete, but its framework was established, and it was already Terra's largest and tallest building complex. Today, countless laborers who had dedicated themselves to this city temporarily ceased their busy work. They were permitted to stand within this marble city and witness this great moment. The celebration of Genseed Primarch Ning Lu's return. This was both a reward from Mikado for their hard work and a tool for his propaganda. The laborers would share this moment with their families, relatives, and friends. Ning Lu's gaze swept over the crowd, looking towards the Lion's Gate spaceport, which, along with the Eternity Wall spaceport, constituted the two major orbital facilities of the Terra Imperial Palace. The bustling spaceport had temporarily halted other ship arrivals and departures due to Ning Lu's arrival. The empty docking area was now filled with welcoming vehicles. As Ning Lu looked there, he was immediately drawn by a familiar, dazzling light. His figure appeared old and frail, yet he emitted a dazzling light, like a star. Open black lens bracket Mikado actually came to greet me personally. Given his status, this isn't necessary, so he's really giving me a lot of face. When one humbles oneself, there must be something sought. I need to be wary. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's eyes narrowed, and he secretly grew vigilant. As the shuttle slowly descended, numerous servo skulls, equipped with loudspeakers and silk streamers, simultaneously chanted loudly. Lord Ning Lu, son of the Emperor, Genseed Primarch of the 11th Legion. Lord Ning Lu, restorer and ruler of Vostronia, ruler of the Tricon system. Welcome, Lord Ning Lu, son of the Emperor, Genseed Primarch of the 11th Legion, has arrived among you. Lower and middle-ranking Imperial staff, wealthy merchants, and the families of Solar Auxilia officers, having gained Mikado's favor, formed the welcoming party, and they immediately erupted in thunderous cheers. The Imperial Orchestra played beautiful melodies composed by songsmiths for the Genseed Primarch's arrival, mingling with the continuously looping hymns broadcast by the servo skulls loudspeakers and the cheers of the populace. The sounds were chaotic yet wonderfully blended, forming a peculiar yet harmonious symphony. Mikado, clad in a hooded robe, walked towards Ning Lu amidst the symphony. Ning Lu, on behalf of my master, I welcome his son. Welcome back to your birthplace, your home. Mikado's voice was not loud, yet it contained a peculiar power that transcended the surrounding noise. Mikado, I salute you. Ning Lu bowed slightly, saluting the immortal. After exchanging greetings, Mikado glanced at Arsena behind Ning Lu and immediately recognized him as a psyker. After correlating him with the original body servant mentioned in his intelligence, he nodded slightly in acknowledgement. The silver-haired Arsena, sensing the immense power emanating from the frail old man, couldn't help but bow in salute. After Mikado nodded, he looked at the giant before him. Ning Lu, you have recovered over 30 worlds for the Imperium, including the Night World Darksos twins. You have driven out Xenos and brought lost human brethren back into the embrace of the Imperium. You have achieved great glory. Please allow me to bestow upon you a medal of honor. Mikado took the Golden Vow Knight medal from the attendant who held it in both hands. This medal was designed by the Imperial Regent's command to be awarded to those who recovered Night Worlds. The golden medal was inlaid with rubies symbolizing courage and blue enamel symbolizing loyalty, and it was engraved with green inscriptions, symbolizing the conquest of the Vickers Trex Knight family. Ning Lu bent down, allowing Mikado to pin the palm-sized golden medal to his left chest, while a thought surfaced in his mind. Open black lens bracket. The 11th Legion should also establish its own medal and honor system. Close black lens bracket. As he straightened up, Mikado gestured to the side. Ning Lu, please board the vehicle and begin your journey of honor. The people of the Imperium await this moment. Ning Lu then boarded the armored vehicle, a conveyance suited to his massive size, resembling a land ship, with the imperial golden double-headed eagle carved on its side. Mikado boarded another, smaller vehicle, yielding the protagonist position to the Genseed Primarch. Ning Lu boarded the armored vehicle, a smile gracing his face, and proceeded forward amidst the cheering crowds. The cheers of the imperial populace rose in waves, and they gazed at the shining Genseed Primarch, straining to surge forward, all wishing to get closer to the Emperor's son. The security forces and temporarily conscripted Solar Auxilia struggled to maintain order. Ning Lu, with a gentle smile, completed his journey to the Terra Imperial Palace and entered the Golden Banquet Hall with Mikado. Chapter 129, Mikado's Request, Ning Lu's Conditions. In the banquet hall, Terra's finest chefs presented delicacies cooked from ingredients sourced from across the galaxy to the Genseed Primarch. The moment the head chef lifted the silver cloche, the rich aroma of black truffles met the tender juiciness of steak, filling the air. Roasted pork knuckles and Wagyu beef sat opposite each other across porcelain plates, and the fat marbling of 5-year-old ham resembled neat geometric patterns. Caviar dropped onto savory sea urchin, immediately stirring up a miniature monsoon in the central air conditioning ducts. Ning Lu sat on the throne, savoring the gourmet food. The Genseed Primarch enjoyed the feast for his taste buds, and though many officials and nobles attending the banquet wished to converse with him, they could only await an opportunity. Ning Lu listened as Mikado discussed the progress of the Great Crusade, and he responded to the questions he posed. He noticed that Mikado mentioned that after Horus parted ways with him, he suddenly accelerated his pace of conquest. The Shadow Moon Wolves adopted diplomatic and peaceful methods less frequently, instead opting for rapid strikes to conquer newly discovered worlds. Open black lens bracket. It seems he's secretly competing with me. There's really no need for that. I have no intention of comparing achievements with the Shadow Moon Wolves. I will deploy some legionary warriors into the construction of conquered worlds, so the Genseed Primarch's top achievement will still be yours, the Warmaster's position will also be yours, and the Chaos Gods chose you too. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu contemplated, Mikado's topic suddenly shifted. The glorious achievements of the Great Crusade are inseparable from the contributions of Terra's populace. Talented youths selected from various hive cities ensure the steady growth in numbers of each legion. According to statistics, the average working hours of Terra's populace have increased by 19.34%. It is precisely due to their sacrifices, and the supplies from various casting worlds, that the Great Crusade has proceeded smoothly. Ning Lu nodded slightly, saying noncommittally, "This is a glorious sacrifice." Mikado was silent for a moment, seemingly not expecting the Genseed Primarch's response to be so indifferent. His eyes were deep, and after a moment of thought, he said in an appreciative tone, "I heard that the worlds under your rule, Ning Lu, are thriving, which is commendable." Upon hearing this, Ning Lu looked thoughtful. He had already guessed Mikado's underlying meaning. "I hope Vostronia can become an important supply node for the surrounding regions, ensuring supplies for passing fleets." As the Great Crusade progressed and the Terra Imperial Palace entered its full construction phase, Mikado felt increasing pressure on his shoulders, which even added a new wrinkle to his face. Upon seeing the prosperity of Vostronia in the intelligence reports, especially its explosively growing industrial capacity, he immediately realized that if Ning Lu was willing to provide close proximity supplies for the Great Crusade, the pressure would be significantly reduced. The officials and nobles exchanged glances, realizing that Chancellor Mikado was using this public occasion, this event where the Genseed Primarch received honor and praise, to compel him to agree. If the Genseed Primarch disagreed, he would be branded as someone who disregarded the greater good. Vostronia's current situation is also the result of the hard work of its people. It was not easy. Moreover, next, I will undertake large-scale construction on other worlds reclaimed by the Legion, and this has received the Emperor's approval. Upon hearing this, everyone turned their gaze towards Mikado, whose face beneath his hood was like an enigma, difficult to discern. Just when Mikado thought Ning Lu would refuse, the Gene Seed Primarch suddenly spoke. Although Vostronia faces many difficulties, I am willing to contribute more to the Great Crusade and bear part of the supplies, but I also have a request. Ning Lu naturally wanted benefits. He remembered that during the Great Crusade, the main supply responsibility fell to the casting worlds of the Mechanicus, in addition to Terra and the worlds conquered directly by the Emperor and non-Legion fleets, which were under direct Imperial control. It wasn't until the Emperor began the Webway project, and Mikado took charge of all political affairs, that he began to assess the taxes each world should pay. This move, more than Mikado's other policies, was resented and resisted by almost all Astarte's legions, who viewed the tax collectors as vultures. After Horus stole the blade of the arch-enemy in Erebus, leading to his diplomatic failure with Turks, he was instructed by the Warmaster to delay. The Warmaster recognized the drawbacks of the taxation system, stating bluntly, "The Terra Council has placed a heavy burden on the shoulders of nascent worlds, which may be enough to crush them. Taxation is too early, too broad, and too harsh. Many worlds will resist, and riots will follow. If the peasants we conquer hear of a new master, they will merely shrug and accept it. But if the peasants we conquer hear they must surrender a fifth of their income, they will surely raise their pitchforks." Thus, when Horus betrayed, and when he raised the cry to overthrow the tyranny of Terra, he gained support from numerous worlds. In fact, the Astartes legions, designed as weapons of war, had no obligation to supply the Imperial fleet, they were the recipients of supplies. Even in the future, the homeworlds of the Astartes chapters would be exempt from special taxes, with the only contribution being Gene Seed. But Ning Lu still agreed to Mikado's request, taking on additional responsibility. On one hand, it stemmed from his confidence in the production capacity of the worlds under his command, his order shadows, and the extraordinary individuals he cultivated. On the other hand, the supply fleet would also bring specialties from more worlds, giving him the opportunity to obtain more potion materials, and he would adopt corresponding measures. Mikado was momentarily stunned upon hearing this. Ning Lu actually agreed. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. "Ning Lu, what do you want? Speak freely. My fleet needs a supply point in the Solar Star region. One of my psychers, Malin Ascala, divined a world connected to my destiny, Necromunda. Necromunda would become the largest hive city world in the future Imperium, with thousands of hive cities on it, its production capacity comparable to the sum of several, or even dozens, of hive city worlds or civilized worlds. If Ning Lu could conquer Necromunda, he would not only gain a strategic foothold in the Solar Star region but also acquire production capacity that could largely offset consumption." As for the prophecy, it was, of course, a reason fabricated by Ning Lu, an excuse for him to know about this yet-to-be-discovered world. But she couldn't divine the star chart to this world. Ning Lu looked at Mikado. "I heard that you are a powerful psyker, and I hope you can give me enlightenment." Mikado hadn't expected Ning Lu's request to be merely the deduction of a star chart to Necromunda, which was something he could do, and even easier than increasing supply capabilities that couldn't be improved in a short time. "No problem. Come to the Astromicon tomorrow, and I will perform a divination for you. Afterwards, we can discuss and finalize the scope of supplies in detail." Feeling a slight easing of pressure, Mikado couldn't help but smile genuinely. He stood up and raised his wine glass. "Everyone, let us toast to the Gene Seed Primarch's generosity and to the contributions of Vostronia's people. The Imperium will remember their sacrifices and contributions." Numerous officials and nobles quickly raised their glasses, accompanying the two most powerful individuals in the Imperium in drinking the sweet wine. The next day, Ning Lu arrived at the Astromicon in the northeast corner of the Terra Imperial Palace. Chapter 130, Mikado divines the star chart. Mikado's attendant pulled open the grand door for him, and the Gene-Seed Primarch stepped into the observatory. The greenish tiles covering the inner dome reflected the bright glow of hundreds of candles, and the flickering candlelight cast shadows that made the numerous mysterious patterns on the dome appear to alternately brighten and dim. Ning Lu, looking up, noticed that the specific content of those patterns was not easy to discern. Some were constellation symbols, while others were mythical monsters from the ancient ages of Terra. At the highest point of the dome was a mass of shadow, an area that the candlelight struggled to reach. Many years ago, a face had been carved there, but its details were now indistinguishable. Ning Lu directed his gaze there, keenly perceiving the difference in that pattern. It seemed alive, hidden in the darkness, staring down expressionlessly. Open black lens bracket from a mythical creature. A spiritual remnant. Is that creature a high-sequence potion ingredient? Based on the special connection between potion ingredients and their pathways, it is likely related to the darkness pathway. Close black lens bracket. That's just the residual image of an ancient creature. Mikado knew the Gene-Seed Primarch was keenly perceptive, and he gave a self-deprecating smile. Since my master, your father, departed, I've spent less and less time gazing at the stars here. Ning Lu withdrew his gaze, sensing Mikado's reluctance to speak further. He didn't press, instead following Mikado's words and turning his attention to the room. Old brass telescopes, orreries, and armillary spheres were neatly stacked, and several mahogany cabinets held various astrological artifacts, while bookshelves were filled with books. Ning Lu saw spiritual light on several of these items. Open black lens bracket him, Mikado has quite a collection too, and they're all potion ingredients I didn't know about. That means they are at least mid-sequence potion ingredients. Close black lens bracket. His gaze then fell upon the black and white checkered marble floor, and the gilded walls around it shimmered with a dull, aged luster. 20 columns supported the dome, with 2 of their capitals each bearing an engraved emblem. One was a black wolf's head under the moon, the other was indistinct, and only upon closer inspection by an ordinary person could it be seen as an unordered pattern composed of chaotic black arcs, wings, thorns, and an abstract crown. Mikado wore a simple but well-made robe, and the staff he leaned on, which seemed to be made of plain steel, had an intricately crafted eagle emblem at its top. In Ning Lu's supernatural vision, the staff's material was not steel but some peculiar psychic material, and he also noticed obscure runes carved into its shaft. You've worked hard, Ning Lu said sincerely. The heavy burden of running the Imperium rested on an old man, and even with his immense power, it was a heavy load. I've grown accustomed to it. From the day I pledged allegiance to him, I anticipated this day. Mikado's tone was deep, as if lost in memory. After more than 10 seconds, he snapped back to reality, saying with a self-deprecating laugh. Apologies, I got lost in my memories. You should understand, by any measure, I am an old man. Seeing Ning Lu nod, Mikado changed the subject and spoke. Divination requires information. Besides the name Necromunda, I need more details. Ning Lu had anticipated this and immediately replied. On Necromunda, I saw an octopus-shaped creature, and I saw fish people kneeling and worshipping him. He looked up at the dome, musing. It gives me a similar feeling to that thing on the ceiling. I think, in the warp, that should be the most obvious. I also saw cobwebs wrapped around Necromunda and spiders lurking on them, and I heard the fearful whispers of countless people. Upon hearing this, Mikado said with a solemn tone. Faith. After a moment of silence, he realized he couldn't deny the existence of what a keenly perceptive Gene-Seed Primarch had sensed. I believe the Emperor and Horus have already discussed the imperial truth with you, so I needn't repeat it. Your perception is correct, faith is merely a fragile human's delusional fantasy. That octopus creature is just a slightly powerful being, no different from those above my head. It is precisely because of their power that ignorant believers worship them. When they encounter a more powerful existence, they will be shattered, just like the shadow painted on the dome. After speaking, Mikado walked to the cabinet and took out the necessary items. As for that spider, it is even more illusory. Let me reveal its illusion to you. A moment later, a huge parchment scroll was unfurled, as large as a wall. Compared to data slates, I'm still more accustomed to traditional methods. This time, Mikado didn't allow himself to fall into a prolonged reverie. He began his divination. Ning Lu noticed Mikado slightly raising his staff, and a brilliant psychic light shot directly towards the shadow at the highest point of the dome. Invisible ripples spread out, and the constellations and mythical creatures on the dome all emitted dazzling light, as if the entire observatory was merging into the waves of the warp. The Gene Seed Primarch's perception, combined with the Flayo's etheric knowledge, rapidly analyzed the information in his mind. Open black lens bracket psychic array. The stars powering it come from stones of various stars, which have been refined with psychic energy in the warp. Those painted mythical creatures also provided Mikado with materials for arranging the psychic array, including at least blood. What a grand undertaking. There are only a handful of people in the entire Imperium with the ability and materials to set up such a psychic array. Close black lens bracket. The Gene Seed Primarch's astonishment flashed and then faded, and he looked at Mikado, his eyes instantly turning deep as he looked up at the dome, his gaze penetrating the physical world's obstruction. The entire space seemed to enter a peculiar state. After an unknown period, he withdrew his gaze and began to sketch figures on the parchment. As his brush moved, a star chart slowly materialized. Ning Lu noticed that Mikado's expression was normal, and the flickering light in his subspace insight showed no change, indicating that this divination had not consumed much of his energy. A moment later, Mikado was silent for a while, reining in the surging power, and then deactivated his psychic abilities. He looked at Ning Lu. The star chart you requested is ready. I also saw the octopus and spider you mentioned. The octopus creature is in a state of slumber. Its faith exists only among fish people and a small portion of humans, so you don't need to deal with it. Mikado paused for a moment before continuing. I don't doubt your abilities, but it slumbers underground, and once it awakens, it will be a catastrophe for all of Necromunda. The earth will crack, and countless people will be swallowed. Ning Lu nodded slightly. He didn't possess the desire for battle or the competitive spirit that Mikado seemed to fear. Open black lens bracket in my memory, that great octopus remained in slumber until the great rift opened, so there's no rush to deal with him. Fighting it now would be a catastrophe for Necromunda. I'll deal with it when I have the power to crush him. Even if it's not a potion ingredient, it can be used for other things. Close black lens bracket. As for the spider you sensed, as I said, it is merely the illusory faith of the people of Necromunda. It's like a small fish in the ocean, a single wave will scatter it. Though illusory, after you reclaim Necromunda, you should also break down these false beliefs and let those ignorant masses receive the Imperium's call. Mikado emphasized his words to draw the Gene Seed Primarch's attention. I sensed fear and death from that spider. Faith rooted in this will only create ignorant believers, and they will be a constant source of instability in that world. Ning Lu looked at Mikado with admiration. As expected of the wise man Huang Laohan relied on, Mikado had deduced the hidden dangers of Necromunda purely from the partial information he had foreseen. One major instability in the blessed Necromunda was the corpse grinder cult, and the worship of the demon prince of corn, the lord of flesh, which was closely linked to the local culture. Spiders symbolize all the fears of the people of Necromunda, and hunger is one of them. Dying of hunger means becoming food for spiders. To overcome the fear of hunger, countless lower nest and bottom nest laborers began cannibalism, leading to the birth of the corpse grinder cult, and the worship of the Lord of Flesh. I understand, I will address it. Hearing Ning Lu's confidence, Mikado didn't press further. I hear you have a great interest in various peculiar objects, and I also have some private collections. Since you were willing to take on the responsibility for supplies this time, you've solved a considerable problem for me. I don't have much more to give you, so you can choose one item from my collection as a personal gift from me. Mikado had no doubt that the Gene Seed Primarch's wisdom would have seen through his earlier use of public means. Now was the time to mend relations. Divination was merely a trifle for him. Since Ning Lu had this hobby, he also wished to use it to foster a closer relationship and lay a friendly foundation for finalizing the scope of supplies later. Ning Lu hadn't expected such an unexpected gain and naturally wouldn't refuse. Mikado's treasury might not compare to the Emperor's, but it should still contain high-sequence potion ingredients. With anticipation in his heart, a smile naturally appeared on the Gene Seed Primarch's face. Then I thanked the hand imprinter. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 131, Mikado's Private Collection. Follow me. Ning Lu picked up the parchment scroll and followed Mikado out of the astrogator. Walking along the marble path in the palace, Mikado, in a good mood, asked Ning Lu. Are you settling in well at the courtyard? Not bad, they were prepared for us. Ning Lu said. The square's building complex had 20 structures, far exceeding the size of mortals and also larger than an Astarte's physique. Mikado's eyes deepened, and memories flashed again. The Emperor once hoped that you could grow and learn the skills he needed you to master here before the Great Crusade officially began. But we never did. Ning Lu silently added in his heart. Open black lens bracket. Perhaps Alfarius was an exception. Close black lens bracket. Strictly speaking, no, Mikado said. At least not for their original intention. The hand imprinter, after a momentary sadness for his servant's ruined efforts, continued. Horus once lived in his courtyard for a short period, and now it's you. I imagine your brothers will all temporarily reside there in the future. As they spoke, they arrived in front of a building. This was an ancient building, its bronze spiral plates glowing faintly under the light. Mikado pushed open the door, leading Ning Lu to view his collection. My most precious possessions are 2 ancient paintings found during the disaster of the Age of Strife, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, and Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers. Ning Lu's gaze lingered for a moment on these 2 famous works he had never seen in his previous life. After noticing they were perfectly preserved in the stasis field but lacked spiritual light, he looked away. Despite marveling at the master's art, he wouldn't be extravagant enough to choose non-potion materials. I don't take what others cherish. Seeing Ning Lu had no interest in the 2 master paintings, Mikado breathed a sigh of relief and continued to lead Ning Lu through his private collection. Ning Lu noticed that, compared to the Emperor, Mikado's collection was more art-centric. This also aligned with the Gene Seed Primarch's impression of Mikado. He supported chroniclers joining the expeditionary fleet to record the glorious achievements of the Great Crusade from an artistic perspective. Mikado also instructed the Ministry of Interior to take over the Civilization Preservation Project, founded by Kaspar Hauser. After viewing 12 items, Ning Lu found the first item with spiritual light, and he stopped before an ancient manuscript. With just a glance, he could tell that its content belonged to a linguistic system distinctly different from Gothic. It seemed like some unintentionally generated garble, but when the Gene Seed Primarch absorbed it into his mind, he felt it contained a certain intrinsic logic, written in a coded form. Mikado noticed Ning Lu's action and began to introduce it. That is the Voynich manuscript. It was written between the 15th and 16th centuries AD. Its content is unknown, its author unknown, and it's named after the bookseller who discovered it in 1912. Perhaps only he could know who wrote it and what its content is. Ning Lu's eyes flashed. Having just witnessed Mikado's prophetic abilities, he was definitely a leader among humans. And since prophecy could glean information from objects, if Mikado couldn't obtain information, or at least couldn't fully obtain information from this manuscript, it must be a high-sequence potion material. Open black lens bracket the pages. The first thing that comes to mind is the White Tower pathway, but it could also be the Perfector pathway, or even related to the Fools sequence 3 feet ancient scholar. At least there's a fallback. If there isn't a better option, I can choose it. At least it won't be a waste of this opportunity. Close black lens bracket. Do you want to choose it? Mikado inquired, and Ning Lu shook his head slightly. If the hand imprinter isn't in a hurry, I'd like to look through everything before making a choice. I'm not in a hurry. You can look through everything before making a choice. I will introduce each collection to you. Mikado said patiently. Although he had many other important matters, since he had promised Ning Lu a choice, he did not rush him. Ning Lu walked forward, looking at Mikado's collection. He occasionally stopped, not only in front of potion materials but also pausing briefly before other items. Each time he paused, the duration was similar, showing an equal degree of interest in these items. When Ning Lu stopped for the 33rd time, his eyes were fixed on a trihedron. It appeared to be formed from some kind of purple alloy, and on each of its faces, there were eyes of distinct forms. One face had a cold, indifferent, lashless eye containing countless brilliant stars. Another face was a black mass covered in countless eyes. The last face was a deep, clearly unfocused, blank eye. Ning Lu almost immediately associated it with the hermit pathway. The eye on the first face reminded him of the eye in the symbolic representation of the hermit pathway. The black mass of countless eyes was the mythological creature form of the hermit pathway. The last face made him think of the state of a sequence 3-feet divination master, when using their extraordinary abilities. Open black lens bracket. It's almost certain that the extraordinary characteristics contained within it are those of a sequence 3-feet divination master, from the hermit pathway, close black lens bracket. This was the first time Ning Lu had precisely identified an item to a specific sequence among the many collections of Huang Laohan and Mikado. It comes from a destroyed intergalactic civilization, a civilization one call Ariadne. Their warriors used blood-red spears. I call it the divination dice. It's thrown once every 3 years, and when it stops, its upward-facing top projects a light screen, displaying images and textual symbols. During the 3 years, throwing it yields no results, as if it needs 3 years to charge. Just like most psychics who attempt to peer into fate only passively see a corner of it, the projected images are also blurry and passive. Ning Lu's eyes flashed, and he pressed on. Can it not be controlled? There's no way. I've tried many methods, including but not limited to psychic manipulation, setting up directional psychic arrays, using divination foci, and many other means, but I haven't been able to make it display according to my will. For me, it's somewhat useless. Random results rely on elusive luck, and it's not even as effective as my own prophecies. Ning Lu nodded slightly. As a powerful psychic, the divination dice was indeed of little use to Mikado. Unable to actively control the prophecy. Is there really no way? Open black lens bracket. Assuming the divination dice contains an extraordinary item of sequence 3 level, then its prophecies would indeed be undisturbed. But if there is absolute suppression of authority, then it might be possible to make it prophesy according to one's will. And I, possessing the disordered country, happen to have this possibility, and the third layer of true space also has the special effect of establishing connections. Compared to other choices, the divination dice, whose specific sequence can be determined, is a better choice. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu had already decided at this point that unless he saw a special item later, he would choose it. He walked forward, continuing to examine other collections. After Ning Lu had viewed all the collections, Mikado asked, "Have you made a decision?" "Yes." He walked back to the trihedron again. "I want the divination dice." "Good. How much longer until it can be used?" Mikado was silent for a few seconds before replying. 11 months. Ning Lu then picked up the transparent, glass-like box, which contained the divination dice. Before they parted, Mikado reminded the Gene Seed Primarch of his schedule. "I have arranged for the Empire's finest sculptors to meet you tomorrow. They need to record your appearance, even if it's a huge challenge to their will. They will restore your appearance with sculptures, even if it's only a part, it's necessary. They once did it for Horus. Afterward, the statue will be placed in the Plaza of Heroes. It will be the second statue erected in that massive open-air plaza." Ning Lu nodded slightly. "I will cooperate with them." On his way back to the courtyard, he thought to himself. Open black lens bracket. That shadow, that mythological creature, Terra still has many valuable things that should be explored. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 132, Mind Pierce. As Ning Lu pondered, he walked to a circular plaza. The colorful mosaics piecing together the plaza depicted an abstract geometric pattern, like a mural. The plaza led to 20 buildings, a number that was no coincidence. They were the residences the Emperor had prepared for the Gene Seed Primarchs. Ning Lu walked along the path by the lake and entered a courtyard built of pale stones. In the courtyard, there was a training ground. 12 Order Shadows, seeing the Gene Seed Primarch return, stopped their actions and saluted their Gene Father. Ning Lu nodded slightly, then looked up at the orbit. His consciousness spread upwards to the orbit, finding the Void Hunter among many ships, then locking onto Tierney's location. He sent commands and the dark pattern of the observatory vault via telepathy to the thief. Send someone to investigate the relevant information. Do not personally risk yourself. What Ning Lu wanted to avoid was not Mikado's eyes. It would be illogical for him, with his keen perception, not to investigate after discovering a mythical creature. The current treasure hunting team also lacked the ability to avoid Mikado's eyes. He wanted to avoid other forces as much as possible. Ancient creatures that even the Gene Seed Primarchs were curious about, those families, whether coveting or currying favor, would send personnel to search, which would alarm the mythical creature that might still be alive. Ning Lu then walked into a 3-story black villa, which Mikado had ordered to be painted black. The entire building looked more like obsidian than a marble structure. The first floor had a large living room and a dining room by the window. Honor Guard members lived in the guest rooms on this floor, making it convenient for them to stand guard and train in the courtyard's training ground. Ning Lu sat down in his matching alloy chair in the living room, pondered for a moment, then opened his communicator. He gave instructions to the astropathic master to mobilize the 2nd, 4th, 5th, 7th, 11th, and 12th battle groups to the Solar Star region. He knew that the current ruler of Necromunda was the Round Spider Alliance, a civilization spanning 6 star systems, connected by warp gates. The rulers of the Round Spider Alliance were the techno-nobility. They called their homeworld Spider Star, which the human empire renamed Necromunda after its conquest. Considering that the Imperial Fists could blitz a star system in 1 day and reach Spider Star in 2 months, defeating the Round Spider Alliance was not a major challenge. However, he thought of how the Round Spider Alliance had destroyed the warp gates in 5 star systems besides Necromunda, leaving only Necromunda after the explosions. Ning Lu did not want such waste. He wanted all 6 star systems of the Round Spider Alliance, and the warp gates were also worth studying. He wanted to conquer the 6 star systems at an even faster pace. Besides blitzkrieg tactics, he had another possible way to solve the warp gate explosions, to gain inspiration from the recently acquired divination dice. As Ning Lu pondered, he rose from his chair and walked up the stairs. He left the 2nd floor to the original body servant and his retinue. The reader, with his assistants, had already departed for various libraries to find and record information. Ning Lu went straight up to the 3rd floor, which had a large bedroom, a study, a washroom, and a large balcony. Ning Lu went to the study, sat on a chair identical to those in the living room, opened a transparent box, and took out the 3-sided dice. The divination dice required a normal person to hold it with both hands, but the Gene Seed Primarch picked it up with just 2 fingers. Upon touching the 3-sided dice, he felt a cold sensation. Its material was like metal. Ning Lu casually tossed it, and the divination dice spun and landed on the long table. After a moment, no anomaly was projected. Open black lens bracket. Just as Mikado said, the divination dice usually acts like an ordinary dice. There are still 11 months until the next recharge is full. Close black lens bracket. As the Gene Seed Primarch pondered, he extended 2 fingers, picked it up again, placed it in his palm, and examined it carefully. While Ning Lu was studying the divination dice, in Traina, the capital of the Traina system. Red, elegant flying vehicles swiftly streaked through the air, heading towards a building. On one of the red motorcycles, a tall figure in a red robe with a white masked hood raised his staff and issued commands in Eldar. Attack the monkeys, save our kin. The Eldar had already confirmed through prophecy that there were only 34 black-armored monkey warriors here, and they would surely rescue their injured kin. This would be a surprise attack. By the time the monkeys reacted, they would have rescued their kin and elegantly retreated. At the same moment, Howard, feeling his jurisdiction invaded, immediately issued commands over the communication channel. Xenos invasion, prepare for battle. A sharp glint flashed in the Arbitrator Lord's eyes. For nearly a year, he had been waiting for this day. To catch the bait, he had set up his office in the building where the Eldar were held. Today, he finally had this opportunity. Only by capturing the shaman of the Eldar could he know the purpose of the Sam Khan arc and complete the Gene Seed Primarch's mission to find Vigilance Star. Howard strode towards the balcony. At the same moment, the Eldar motorcycle riders outside also launched their assault, diving down to attack the black-armored warriors. The jet bikes, embedded shuriken cannons aimed downwards, instantly firing hundreds of triangular monomolecular shurikens, like vast nets, to envelop their targets. Shuriken weapons are unique Eldar weapons, a technology extremely advanced and difficult to replicate. Shuriken weapons are based on a gravity accelerator, with a plastic crystal core in the magazine as ammunition. During an attack, a shuriken weapon releases a high-energy pulse from the rear, stripping off a monomolecular shuriken from the ammunition core, which is then fired at high velocity through the barrel. Magnetic anti-gravity devices fix the ammunition core, keeping it properly positioned relative to the pulse. Weapons fired in this manner can unleash hundreds of rounds in 1 or 2 seconds, and each core can provide for over a dozen bursts. The drawback of this weapon is that the barrel has no rifling, so accuracy is lacking. However, shuriken weapons don't need aiming. The area covered by hundreds of monomolecular shurikens is harder to dodge than a dozen precisely aimed rounds. But the Order Shadows of the first battle group were faster than the Eldar warriors. Alerted by their lord, and relying on their superhuman perception, they immediately detected the rapidly approaching Eldar jet bikes. They completed their tactical maneuvers and dodged the attacks just before the Eldar warriors launched their assault, simultaneously raising their bolt guns and launching a counterattack. Shuriken weapons have a shorter range compared to projectile weapons of similar size. The motorcycle riders, after their dive-bombing assault, were very close to the Space Marines. Many riders didn't have time to dodge, and several Eldar were instantly torn apart by bolt gun fire. The shaman was shocked to see the first rapid strike fail. He had just raised his staff, preparing to attack the black-armored monkey warriors. The arbitrator, who had instantly rushed to the balcony, had already locked onto his target. His black eyes glowed with a faint blue light, an invisible shimmer passed, and a lightning bolt struck the Eldar's soul. The shaman, struck by the mind pierce attack, immediately felt a pain so intense he couldn't think. The magistrate's amplification within his jurisdiction caused powerful damage to the shaman. The shaman immediately tumbled off his jet bike. The magistrate drew his power sword and leapt up, instantly appearing before the Xenos. Howard swung his sword, and the blue energy field crackled, shredding the Eldar's right shoulder and arm. The staff clattered to the ground. The arbitrator extended his left arm, tightly gripping the shaman's neck. The sudden turn of events astonished the Eldar riders. Their shaman had actually been captured by a monkey. The enraged Windrider riders immediately turned and charged towards Howard. Chapter 133, The Inquisitor. Just as the shaman felt the sharp pain in his soul subside slightly, he felt his neck being tightly constricted, and his right arm was torn from his body. The intense pain made his raised left arm tremble slightly. Before he could launch an attack, the Inquisitor's eyes flashed, and the alien, struck by a soul pierce, felt his brain explode, blood spurting from his nose and mouth. The Arbitrator Lord landed, carrying the unconscious shaman, as the Eldar rushed in from all directions. Every second, Windrider riders fell from their bikes, but the Eldar did not dodge. They had to immediately rescue the captured shaman from the monkeys. The two fastest Eldar, forming a pincer movement, lunged at Howard. They were wary of the shaman being in enemy hands, so they did not use shuriken catapults but instead took power lances from their bike weapon mounts. The Windrider riders swiftly turned their jet bikes when they were only a few meters from Howard. The airflow cut a graceful arc as the two Eldar warriors simultaneously raised their power lances and thrust them at Howard. The magistrate took a step forward, passing through the Eldar's swift attack. The two Eldar warriors were greatly surprised. The black armored monkey actually possessed such terrifying speed. They immediately turned their jet bikes around. The magistrate swung his power sword, instantly completing 6 thrusts according to Osber Via's 16th principle. The two Eldar warriors had no time to dodge and were torn into several pieces by the blue energy field, sliding off their inertia-driven jet bikes. A moment later, apart from 6 Windrider riders who were captured alive, all other Sam-Khan Eldar who had invaded the magistrate's jurisdiction were killed. Howard carried the unconscious shaman to the interrogation room. The tech sergeant immediately used specially made, thorn-like shackles for the shaman, passing them through the alien's left arm and both legs. The unconscious shaman instinctively trembled from pain as countless sharp spikes pierced his body. Then, a member of the honor guard roughly tore off his faceplate, still enraged by the death of his battle brothers. The shaman's head hit the chair heavily, revealing his pale face, blood dripping onto the ground. The shaman gradually regained consciousness after being injected with an interrogation drug researched and developed from captured members of his own race. The Eldar's keen perception allowed him to still feel the sharp pain in his soul, and he also found that his psychic abilities were suppressed. The chains piercing his bones were made of anti-psychic material, isolating him from the warp. While he was still somewhat dazed, he heard clumsy and unpleasant Eldar speech. Sam-Khan, shaman. Howard spoke in the Eldar language he had recently partially learned. After focusing the shaman's attention on himself, he switched back to High Gothic. I believe you speak Gothic. The Inquisitor saw the Eldar crane his neck and look at him with disdain, a smile playing on his lips. Very good, I like your untamed demeanor. As the Inquisitor spoke, lightning flashed in his eyes, as if electricity coursed through them. The next instant, the shaman felt currents of electricity surge through his soul, forming a barbed whip that continuously lashed his soul. The intense pain in his soul made him frown deeply. Just as he was in agony from the whip of pain, High Gothic sounded in his ears again. Do you speak High Gothic? The shaman did not want to answer the monkey's words, but he felt an unimaginable oppressive force. He felt currents of electricity surging chaotically within his mind, forming a barbed whip that continuously lashed his soul. He felt both pain and numbness, as if from the depths of his brain, making it impossible to resist, only to tremble, his knees turning to jelly. This pain was even more agonizing for the shaman than his body being pierced by countless spikes and tormented by anti-psychic material. It was a direct, searing pain to the spirit. The shaman finally spoke unwillingly. The monkey's language poses no difficulty for me. He only wanted to use the opportunity to mock the black armored monkey in front of him to slightly alleviate the pain. If the other party, in anger, gave him release, that would be for the best. Your language, like your incompletely evolved bodies, is monotonous and dull. The Inquisitor immediately felt something melt within him, and it was more pronounced than when he had interrogated previous Eldar captives. He continued to ask, your name? The shaman felt the electric whip in his mind seemingly lifted high, the extreme pain warning him to answer the question, but he stubbornly remained silent. The Inquisitor immediately mobilized his psychic power, and the whip of pain lashed fiercely at the alien's soul. Your name? Shakras. The shaman uttered part of his name, earning a temporary reprieve from the pain. Howard had that feeling of assimilation again. A sneer hung on his lips as he mocked. I thought the proud Eldar were strong. I see you're not much stronger than a monkey. Don't get cocky. The shaman said with difficulty, you won't get any useful information. Won't get any. Howard laughed, and a whip of pain lashed at Shakras's soul. Tell me, what did you prophesy? What prophecy drove you to this star system? Shawcross was startled and shocked by the intense pain. His kin had not endured the torture and had confessed what they knew to the monkeys. The shaman felt angry at his kin's weakness, but then he understood the reason for their surrender. The black armored monkey in front of him possessed a strange ability, able to directly whip his soul. This was the first time he had ever heard of such an ability. How did you do that? Why can you whip my soul? Eldar, you have no right to question me. As the Inquisitor spoke, he used another, whip of pain, to make the Eldar captive recognize his place. Answer my question, what is your prophecy? Crude monkey, you are like your tyrant. You are the enemies of Sam Khan, and you must die. The Inquisitor again had that feeling of assimilation. He immediately realized that the answer to his question was contained within those words. Open black lens bracket. The shaman had prophesied that the Sam Khan craftworld, along with the Legion and the Gene Father, would be enemies, close black lens bracket. Tell me, where is Vigilance Star? The shaman did not speak. He was both shocked and terrified. He knew that humans had named that planet Vigilance Star, and it was crucial to Sam Khan. Open black lens bracket. The monkeys actually knew of the existence of that world. The prophecy was indeed correct. Ning Lu and his descendants are the enemies of Sam Khan. They cannot be allowed to find that world. Close black lens bracket. You won't tell me. The Inquisitor's lips curled. We have plenty of time to play. Believe me, you will tell me everything I want to know. Dream on, Shawcross scoffed. Ning Lu and all of you will be destroyed, death. The soul lashing caused the shaman's words to abruptly cease. He saw anger flash in Howard's black eyes. Alien, you are a captive. You have no right to speak the Gene Father's name. While the Inquisitor was interrogating the shaman, on Terra, Ning Lu was in the ground floor hall, listening to Arsena's report. My lord, I found ancient Achaemenid dynasty mural rubbings in the Cranium Library, from which I gained enlightenment. In addition, I also from. Ning Lu nodded with satisfaction after listening to the reader's briefing. Well done, continue with it. My lord, there is one more matter that requires your decision. Today, many families have approached me, all hoping to gain your support. Ning Lu tapped his finger lightly on the back of his chair. These nobles did not know Huang Laohan's thoughts. Gene-seed Primarchs and Astartes were tools of war. No Gene-seed Primarch or Astartes would enter the future Terran Council, including the Warmaster from Memory and Guilliman, who showed outstanding governance and political ability, and naturally, including himself. Open black lens bracket him, it wouldn't hurt to meet them. I also need ears and spokespersons on Terra. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 134, Strategic Objectives During the Great Crusade. Thinking of this, Ning Lu said to Arsena. You select some families, and I will meet with them later. On the morning of the third day after arriving on Terra, a group of ordinary people dressed in luxurious clothes and with various appearances arrived at the hall of the Gene-seed Primarch's residence. They were the finest sculptors on Terra, and most of them had been fortunate enough to be chosen 15 years prior to sculpt statues for another Gene-seed Primarch. Among them, the sculptors who were recreating Ning Lu's face were the most numerous, totaling 11. Each of them was responsible for recreating his raven hair and broad forehead, his black crystal-like eyes, his straight nose, and so on. There were also many sculptors observing the Gene-seed Primarch, who stood like an obsidian statue, from different angles, either standing, or half reclining, focusing on his profile and back. Having many sculptors work together is not an ideal approach from an artistic perspective, as it almost inevitably leads to inconsistencies due to being the work of different hands. However, this was also a last resort. Through previous experiences, the sculptors had come to understand that no great sculptor could complete this sacred mission alone. They had also tried using photographic methods to record the Gene-seed Primarch's image, but the effect was not as good as seeing him with their own eyes. Just as painters need to see their models in person rather than relying on images. When an ordinary person's senses and brain are attracted to one part of the Gene-seed Primarch, they naturally ignore another part, which would result in a more distorted recreation. The sculptors occasionally reluctantly withdrew their gaze, jotting down the inspiration they had captured. Most of them used traditional parchment for their sketches, with only a few using data slates or other mediums. Every now and then, they would move their gaze away in some horror, then fall into a daze. After 10-odd seconds, or even several minutes, they would recover from their seemingly static state, only to find that the spark of inspiration they had just captured had vanished, and they had to search for the feeling anew. While serving as a sculpture model, Ning Lu's mind raced, secretly pondering the scope of supplies to be defined when he met with Mikado later. Open black lens bracket. According to the Olympia Treaty, supplies are originally the responsibility of the Mechanicus, close black lens bracket. An hour later, Ning Lu spoke. That will be all for now. Hearing him say this, the white-robed, white-haired sculptor in front of him, who was responsible for observing his eyes, frowned tightly and said with reluctance, "Primarch, we still have inspiration about you that we haven't captured or recorded. I understand, but I have other matters to attend to. I believe you can complete the statue using the existing materials." The Gene Seed Primarch's trust filled the sculptors with strength. "My lord, I will certainly recreate your magnificent bearing. My lord, I will certainly showcase the splendor of the Emperor's offspring." Ning Lu nodded in satisfaction. Just as he was about to leave, the white-haired sculptor gritted his teeth, blocked the Gene Seed Primarch's path, and boldly said, "Primarch, at least, let me take a photo." He quickly explained his impoliteness. "Having your overall impression will also help with the recreation." Ning Lu pondered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "All right." The white-haired sculptor held the camera, raised his arms, and pressed the shutter, taking the photo. Ning Lu then walked out of the courtyard and sent a message to Mikado. He received a reply from the hand imprinter, suggesting they talk in detail by the lake. Open black lens bracket. Choosing a relaxed setting to discuss this topic, I see. Close black lens bracket. A moment later, he saw Mikado approaching by the lake, with two gray-robed scribes following behind him on either side. Ning Lu, did it go smoothly? The sculptors are very responsible. I believe the result will not be bad. They all view this as an honor, they will be fully dedicated. After praising the sculptor's attitude, Mikado looked at the Gene Seed Primarch. "I must thank you again. Your willingness to provide supplies has alleviated the pressure I face." Ning Lu calmly accepted the hand imprinter's praise, then spoke. "But this is not indefinite. Supplies should be the responsibility of Mars. Yes, they are working hard on it. They are taking 2 measures to improve supply capacity. They are searching among the worlds that have rejoined the Imperium for those with rich mineral resources to establish new casting worlds. In this regard, some progress has been made. In 813, Mars established a new casting world in Mezine." Ning Lu nodded slightly. The main world of the Tricon system, which he had conquered, was originally going to be developed into a casting world by the Mechanicus, and 3 night worlds would also be established in that system. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but ponder in his mind. Open black lens bracket. The Mechanicus is the faction I have exploited the most. Vostronia was originally a 3-way political entity involving the Imperium, the Mechanicus, and local nobles until the Great Rift opened, but now I control it alone. The Daxos twin star system, loyal to Mars, now has the Vixtrix family pledging allegiance to me. Close black lens bracket. While Ning Lu was deep in thought, he felt no apology towards the Mechanicus. The places they set their sights on all had considerable value, and these worlds were even more valuable. If he could seize them, he should do so early. He couldn't help but think of an as yet undiscovered world, the casting world Sepramundi, which was a convergence point for multiple warp routes and would be the future headquarters of the Imperial Navy in the Obscurus sector. Most importantly, after its discovery, it rapidly grew into a great shipyard, one of 4 that could rival Mars. Ning Lu immediately decided that after talking with Mikado, he would issue new orders to explore the location of Sepramundi. As the Gene Seed Primarch pondered, the two walked along the cold lakeside, and the hand imprinter's voice slowly sounded. At the same time, the rediscovery of Vostronia re-establishing contact with Mars made them realize that some of the exploration fleets and colony ships dispatched in the past should have already achieved results. It's just that, as of yet, nothing has been found. Ning Lu nodded slightly. He did know of some casting worlds established during the Dark Age of technology that had not yet been recovered, such as Jiao Akata, which would be discovered by the Thousand Suns. Open black lens bracket. These worlds cannot be overlooked either. Finding and controlling these casting worlds will not only provide nearby supplies but also unique technologies. Close black lens bracket. The Gene Seed Primarch glanced at the hand imprinter beside him, then spoke. Regarding the supply cutoff point, I think there should be a clear standard. You seem to already have an idea. That's right. The 11th Legion will explore an area with a diameter of 330 light-years, centered on Vostronia, to establish a sector. It will be a contiguous, complete area on the star chart. The Imperium's administration of the galaxy, from top to bottom, is divided into sectors, sub-sectors, systems, and planets. A sector has a diameter of approximately 200 light-years, while a subsector has a diameter of 10 to 60 light-years. The sector defined by Ning Lu, however, would have a diameter of 330 light-years, far exceeding a typical sector. Ning Lu's strategic objective during the Great Crusade was to establish a territory at least comparable to Guilliman's Ultramar sector. In addition, he also aimed to control key nodes of significant value in other areas, extracting maximum profit with minimal investment. Besides strategic points with already discovered routes like Necromunda, the Tricon system, and the Daxos Twin Star system, there were also Sepra Mundi and Vigilance Star included in the plan, as well as potential worlds like Mordian that had not yet been planned for. Mikado gazed into the lake, then, after a moment of silence, spoke. Continue. For every casting world Mars discovers or establishes in an adjacent sector, the scope and magnitude of the supplies I promised will decrease by 20%. Once there are 5 casting worlds in the surrounding area, I will no longer provide supplies to other expeditionary fleets, but the 11th Legion will also not require supplies from other casting worlds. According to Ning Lu's understanding of the Mechanicus, being eager for resources and focused on efficiency, they would establish 5 casting worlds of varying sizes in the surrounding sectors within 30 years at the latest. The hand imprinter's brain spun rapidly, a torrent of data surging at a speed no slower than a Mechanicus Archmagos. Masai transfer point, 5 troop transports, 3 landing craft, 4 solar auxilia legions. Rations, ammunition. The figures for war materials in the Obscurus sector, particularly around Vostronia, flashed through Mikado's mind. 23 seconds later, he spoke. As you say. The hand imprinter made his decision, and 2 scribes immediately noted Mikado's agreement with the Gene Seed Primarch regarding the supply timeline. Next, the scope of supply. Vostronia has already established a shipyard capable of providing repairs for the Great Crusade fleet's vessels. Ning Lu was most willing to provide ship repairs, as it was an excellent way to train skilled workers for various types of vessels. Ning Lu would also cultivate some extraordinary individuals, taking this opportunity to explore the mysteries of those special vessels, believing they would also gain something. Vostronia possesses a relatively complete industrial system, capable of supplying the auxiliary army with laser guns, power magazines. Sea Cradle is rich in produce and can provide food supplies for the Great Crusade fleet, including rice. Ning Lu's speech was rapid, and the 2 scribes nervously recorded the 33 major categories and 1052 minor categories mentioned by the Gene Seed Primarch. The specific supply standards will be discussed and determined by my retinue and Imperial officials. The supplies listed by Ning Lu were all items with high output in Vostronia, possessing strong supply capabilities. As for the standards for each type of supply, they would be set at 20 to 30% of each production capacity, which was a challenge for Vostronia, but not an insurmountable one. Regarding Astarte's Legion equipment, because Vostronia's factories are still being established and the 11th Legion's scale is continuously increasing, it is expected that production capacity will be relatively strained for a period, and there will be no ability to provide supplies. Because the Emperor and Horus had traveled to the Obscurus sector to retrieve the 11th Primarch, The main direction of the current Great Crusade was naturally the Obscurus sector, and the supply pressure in that region was constantly increasing. With Vostronia providing supplies to the Imperium, his pressure was significantly reduced. Mikado was satisfied with the scope of supplies Ning Lu promised to provide, so he decided to offer assistance to the Gene Seed Primarch as well. I will order the Mechanicus Archmagos to provide technical and equipment support for the Order Shadows, ensuring Vostronia possesses complete Legion equipment production capabilities. Thank you for the Hand Imprinter's support. With this, the Order Shadows will be able to join the Great Crusade at a faster pace. The Emperor will be pleased to hear this news. He has always been very satisfied with the progress of the 11th Legion. As the Hand Imprinter spoke, a faint smile appeared on his face. I think he will give you more rewards. I mean, special items, since you have this hobby, and his collection is immeasurable. Mikado, feeling much less pressured, and thinking that the Emperor was also pleased with the Gene Seed Primarch's progress, couldn't help but speak. The briber immediately felt clear signs of digestion, although indirect feedback was not as effective as direct feedback, and certainly not as good as actual feedback, it was clearly perceptible. The lawyer took this opportunity to speak. I have a request regarding a hobby, and I hope to receive the Hand Imprinter's support. Speak freely. I hope that when each fleet receives supplies, they will share a portion of the items they collected during their Great Crusade with me. Ning Lu already knew that potion ingredients were scattered throughout the galaxy, and relying solely on the contributions of his offspring was still somewhat limited in scope. Since he had this opportunity, he naturally wanted to expand the source. As he provided supplies to various fleets, he should also receive corresponding returns. The various fleets will not disregard requests from the Gene Seed Primarch. When they are capable of fulfilling them, they will be happy to satisfy the Gene Seed Primarch's interests. The Hand Imprinter said with a smile. I will attach this instruction to the astropathic communications sent to the various legions later, and in my personal name, I will call upon the various fleets to search for all kinds of special items and bring them to Vostronia, provided it does not affect the progress of the Great Crusade. Ning Lu nodded in satisfaction. The various fleets and auxiliary army would naturally value his Gene Seed Primarch's hobby and consider it an honor to offer him contributions. Most Astartes also had a strong sense of pride in their legions, and the desire not to lose to other legions would prompt them to produce specialties from various worlds that were no less impressive than those of other legions. Open black lens bracket. Thus, it is equivalent to exchanging a portion of production capacity for potion ingredients that have not been touched and might have been missed. Providing supplies to the Imperium is at least not a loss. Close black lens bracket. After discussing the principles of supply, Mikado led the conversation to the next topic, strengthening the connection between the recovered Gene Seed Primarchs and Terra, and the Imperium, which was a secret mission entrusted to him by the Emperor. I think your understanding of Terra, the homeworld of humanity, is not yet complete. You can use your time on Terra to visit places that interest you. He thought of Ning Lu's hobby and said with a smile. I think you will be interested in places like museums and astronomical observatories. Your collection room will gain some interesting additions. Each collection bore the cultural imprint of Terra. When the Gene Seed Primarch admired them, he would naturally recall the related Terra culture. Ning Lu nodded slightly. He understood Mikado's meaning. He remembered that when Fulgrim was on Terra, he, being fond of forging, stayed at Mount Naloda and used the Terava furnace to forge a powerful Warhammer, Furnacebreaker, which he gifted to his good friend Ferrus Manus. The Gene Seed Primarch, thinking of the Terava furnace, naturally recalled information about this tribe. Terava, abbreviated as TW, is a unit of energy commonly used in the nuclear power industry, representing 10 to the 12th power of watts. During the Age of Strife, there was a group on Terra known as the Terava tribe, skilled in machinery and forging. They controlled many furnaces in the Ural Mountains, suspected to have originated from the same source as the Mechanicus of Mars. They had lived in seclusion for thousands of years, little known, and when they reappeared, they chose to pledge allegiance to Huang Laohan. They forged many weapons for Huang Laohan for the Unification Wars, in exchange for Huang Laohan sharing numerous technologies from the Dark Age of Technology with them. Open black lens bracket. The Terava tribe is also a force worth meeting. They were Huang Laohan's arms dealers before he signed a treaty with Mars, and they should have some good things. Close black lens bracket. The Gene Seed Primarch thought of this and then spoke. I will make good use of my time on Terra. After Ning Lu and Mikado chatted a few more words about culture and collections, they bid farewell and parted ways. On his way back to the courtyard, he combined his memories with the information submitted by Arsena to finalize his arrangements for the coming period. Open black lens bracket. After dinner, I'll go to the astronomical observatory first. Close black lens bracket. Thinking of the astronomical observatory, he couldn't help but think of the secret passage. Open black lens bracket. As a Gene Seed Primarch with keen senses, I should at least walk through the secret passage once. Let me think, which Gene Seed Primarchs discovered the secret passages beneath the Imperial Palace? Magnus, close black lens bracket. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 136, Secret Underground Passages of the Terra Imperial Palace. Ning Lu issued orders to the Star Speaker, commanding the 3rd Battle Group and the 8th Battle Group to explore eastward from the northeast and southeast of Vostronia, respectively, on the galactic star map. Subsequently, he brought 2 members of the Honor Guard, Hollis from the 1st Battle Group and Bradshaw from the 11th Battle Group. The 2 Order Shadows were key candidates for the Gene Seed Primarch's observation, as they were the chosen individuals to be sent to the moon. Ning Lu walked back and forth along the path near the lake in the courtyard, his eyes searching the lakeside from both natural and supernatural perspectives simultaneously. Finally, on his second pass, the Gene Seed Primarch sensed a subtle difference in the environment, a point that was abrupt and somewhat discordant. Even he had to compare repeatedly to discover that slight difference. Ning Lu stepped forward, walking towards that discordant point, entering the unnatural passage. The 2 Order Shadows followed the Gene Father, feeling as if they were walking through a curtain of water. The strong scent of the lake water, the smell of damp rocks, and the cold air were all left behind in an instant, as if they had stepped into another dimension. They looked around in surprise, and Hollis, with a bolt gun on his back and a power sword at his waist, spoke with uncertainty. We had absolutely no sensation of this before. These tunnels are not naturally formed. They were not shaped by orogenic movements or plate compression. With the superhuman sensory abilities inherited from the Gene Father, they should have been able to sense it from miles away, yet they felt nothing until the moment they stepped inside. It's not strange that you didn't discover it. Even a Gene Seed Primarch might not necessarily find this place. Bradshaw scanned his surroundings and asked curiously. Was this built by the Emperor? No. This tunnel should have been built by Lehman Russ using his miraculous technology, but the Emperor laid down a psychic prohibition here. The 2 Order Shadows immediately stopped pondering it. They curiously reached out to gently touch the tile walls, which shimmered with an eerie light, and observed the faint biological luminescence emanating from them. They then looked up, where the light from the murky lake bottom rippled across the vast cave ceiling, which was adorned with countless inverted stalactite clusters, like shadows on a seabed. Crystalline lines snaked and glittered in the rock fissures overhead, resembling distant starlight, utterly different from the scene on Terra's surface below. The 2 Order Shadows were vaguely intoxicated by the bizarre beauty. Their pupils dilated, staring fixedly at the crystals overhead, as if something enchanting within them had tightly gripped their eyes and their senses. Ning Lu noticed them moving in slow motion, lifting a leg, putting it down. Every movement became exceptionally slow. The Gene Seed Primarch looked up, sensing the supernatural allure emanating from the shimmering crystals arranged by Lehman Russ. He did not use his psychic powers to help his 2 sons regain consciousness, not because of the psychic prohibition. The psychic prohibition laid down by the Emperor here had a great suppressive effect on ordinary psychics, and even the 1,000 Sons, but it could not suppress a Gene Seed Primarch. He could infuse mental power to help his 2 sons, but he did not do so. Open black lens bracket. This is your final test. Can you overcome your mesmerized senses with your will? close black lens bracket. Countless wondrous light and shadow flickered in the black eyes of the two Order shadows, as if they had arrived in another world. They were immersed in this spectacle, for an unknown duration. Suddenly, a thought simultaneously arose in their minds. Open black lens bracket. We were chosen to serve as the Gene Seed Primarch's honor guard during his journey to and from Terra. Where did the Gene Father go? Close black lens bracket. The two panicked Order shadows snapped back to reality, as if a mirror had shattered before their eyes, and they came to their senses. You have overcome your senses with your will. Hearing the Gene Father's praise, the two Order shadows couldn't help but puff out their chests and continued to walk forward behind Ning Lu. Having nearly succumbed to the illusion, they were highly vigilant, constantly reminding themselves in their minds. The further the two Order shadows advanced, the more they realized how difficult it was to find the correct path within the tunnel network beneath the lake. Every passage seemed to be in a bizarre state. Their perception could not distinguish the differences between each tunnel. They looked distinctly different, yet also seemed the same. They could only follow the Gene Seed Primarch, and they had no doubt that the Gene Father could find the correct route and led them out of this strange labyrinth. Ning Lu suddenly stopped, his gaze falling upon an inconspicuous fluorescent green stone on the ground near the tiled wall, which shimmered with spiritual light. Open black lens bracket. Cold stone. An auxiliary material for the corpse collector, corresponding to sequence 8 inches. The gravedigger, close black lens bracket. The Gene Seed Primarch bent down and picked up an oval stone about the size of a human palm. Ning Lu hadn't expected that, on a whim, by taking the Imperial Palace's underground labyrinth to the astronomical observatory, he would actually encounter alchemical materials. He looked around and found that these fluorescent green stones were neither part of the tunnel network built by Lehman Russ nor did they have the patterns of Huang Laohan's psychic prohibition. Open black lens bracket. Taking these cold stones will not have any impact, close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, the two Order shadows naturally stopped as well. Knowing the Gene Father's hobby, they also bent down and began to pick up the cold stones. The Gene Seed Primarch continued to move forward, the route clearly laid out in his mind. Lehman Russ's supernatural construction techniques could not interfere with his senses. He led his two sons out of the tunnel and onto a set of steps. Before them lay a grand avenue lined with silver birches and plane trees. Ning Lu looked around. The astronomical observatory stood on a raised black rock foundation, and the sheer scale of the building was a marvel of ancient Terra's architecture, not inferior even to the colossal structures of countless eons later. The meticulously carved statuario marble outer wall stood 2,000 meters high, adorned with purplish-red patterns. Gigantic flying buttresses were sculpted into the forms of winged angels, extending from the mountain-like rock bed of the structure, their outstretched arms raised to the sky in a posture of supplication. The entire perimeter wall of the observatory depicted the great pioneers of astronomical history and their myriad achievements. Niches and statues honored Agnik, Sarkov, the heliocentric heretics, Hypatia, the alchemists of Scania, Selema, the mother of comets, and others, each possessing legendary scientific achievements worthy of their place here. Ancient telescopes, once used by the Emperor to observe distant galaxies, hung from iron chains directly above the dome, their obsidian lenses gleaming with deep light under the sun. Ning Lu led the way, ascending the steps, 300 meters wide and cast from Oslerite stone, towards the grand entrance. Gene Seed Primarch. A gasp sounded at the entrance, and people gazed at the tall figure approaching, as if in a dream. Until moments later, the giant's shadow enveloped their bodies. I want to look around the observatory. Of course, the observatory's observation researcher stammered. I will inform the director immediately and have him attend you. No need, Ning Lu shook his head slightly. If necessary, I will summon him. With that, the Gene Seed Primarch walked past the crowd and entered the astronomical observatory. Ning Lu walked through 4 observation rooms in a row, finding nothing. As he entered the 5th observation room, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Chapter 137, The Telema Book. The Gene Seed Primarch nodded slightly, then walked to an astronomical observatory and looked at the telescope on it. It was not as large as the giant telescopes of the night mechs, it was just a bronze telescope about the height of a normal person. My lord. The observer realized it was his duty to introduce it to the Gene Seed Primarch, and he struggled to maintain his usual composure. This telescope has a history of over 10,000 years. It is a creation from the early age of technology, a time when there weren't even warp engines. Ning Lu nodded slightly, thinking to himself. Open black lens bracket. The main mirror of the telescope has a psychic vision light, which should be a potion material, but not a potion material I know of. It's most likely a potion material for the omniscient, corresponding to sequence 5 inches astronomer, or possibly a potion material for the seer, corresponding to sequence 5 inches astrologer, close black lens bracket. He then said to Bradshaw and the observer, I want this telescope. Ning Lu spent the entire afternoon touring the astronomical observatory, finding 5 potion materials and selecting 4 other items, ordering them to be sent to his courtyard. In the evening, he returned to his courtyard and met Arsena Dunn, who had returned from the Cranium Library. My lord, today, while I was perusing books, I saw a poetry collection by Erich Baum. It shone with psychic vision, so I requested it and several other books. The original body servant said, holding the poetry collection in both hands before the Gene Seed Primarch. Ning Lu flipped through the table of contents and, upon seeing the moon and Dresden at night, knew it was the main material for the Midnight Poet. After Ning Lu placed Erich Baum's poetry collection on the table, he continued to speak. From the many factions that sought an audience with you, I have, after selection, initially drafted a list. Ning Lu took the data pad and saw Terava on it. 33 plans instantly formed in the Gene Seed Primarch's mind, including cooperation, conquest, alliance. Tomorrow night, I will meet with the Terava chieftain. He did not know much about Terava and could not ascertain their current situation or the purpose of their visit. He would only decide on the approach after the meeting. After arranging the meeting for the following day, Ning Lu turned his gaze to the courtyard. You, on my behalf, go express gratitude to the people of the Astronomical Observatory. The director of the Astronomical Observatory, leading several observers, delivered the astronomical instruments selected by the Gene Seed Primarch to the courtyard where the Gene Seed Primarch resided. The original body servant stepped out of the villa and, on Ning Lu's behalf, expressed gratitude. Ning Lu then returned to the 3rd floor, entered the disordered country, and instructed the space monkey he named Anthony to prepare 1 dose each of the lawyer and arbitrator potions. Subsequently, the Gene Seed Primarch summoned Hollis and Bradshaw, accepted the cold stones they presented, and watched them drink the golden and black potions respectively. A moment later, after instructing the newly promoted arbitrator and lawyer, the Gene Seed Primarch spoke. I have a task for you. The 2 newly promoted royal knights excitedly said, Father, whatever your command, I will give my all. You will go to the moon and forge the Terran candidates into Order Shadows. Terran will continue to enter various legions for a period, and although their proportion will continue to decline, they are also members of the Order Shadows. Instead of waiting for them to join the legions and then receive cultural indoctrination, it is better to brand them with the mark of the Order Shadows during their modification and training process. Seeing a hint of disappointment and dejection on the faces of the 2 Order Shadows, Ning Lu said with a smile. Your responsibility is very important, thousands of candidates will become Order Shadows under your guidance. I chose you 2 from the Honor Guard, this is a testament to my trust in you. Upon hearing this, Hollis and Bradshaw also realized their Gene Father's trust in them and immediately bowed, saying, We will do our utmost to instruct the candidates to become Order Shadows. Those who are eliminated during promotion but accept the Legion's culture will also be sent back to Vostronia and, depending on their situation, become Legion servants or join the auxiliary army. Before you go to the moon, you must also formulate a training plan and report it to me for finalization, which must cover governance, law, and other related content. The 2 new Terran candidate instructors departed as ordered and began to formulate a new training plan. On the 4th day of Ning Lu's arrival on Terra, He, accompanied by Arsena, Hollis, and Bradshaw, once again walked through the underground secret passage of the Imperial Palace. As Arsena stepped into the strange secret passage, he immediately felt his psychic power completely suppressed, and losing his strength, he felt his own weakness. The reader had no combat-related extraordinary abilities, and even ritual magic could not be used because the language had not yet been researched and the ritual procedures had not been finalized. The original body servant subconsciously rubbed the ring on his finger and then touched the orb he wore, finding strength from it. Arsena's will faced a severe test. He walked nearly 100 meters before his pale face returned to normal. Hollis and Bradshaw, after becoming extraordinary, had their minds strengthened and no longer fell into the crystal illusions above their heads due to inheriting their gene father's superhuman perception. This time, they were prepared, packing cold stones one by one into Astarte's version backpacks. After filling more than half, they slung them around their necks, positioning them on their chests. Ning Lu's goal today was the Cranium Library. After receiving the poetry collection from Arsena last night, he slightly adjusted his plan, moving up his visit to the Cranium Library by 3 days. Exiting the secret passage, he arrived at the foot of the astronomical observatory and walked in the opposite direction of the entrance. Passing by the statues, he paused for a moment before a tall statue carved from onyx and quartz, which depicted the great Copernicus in the first page of his masterpiece. This statue was also the most dazzling work of art among the many statues, but it was not a potion material. After admiring it for a moment, Ning Lu continued forward, along the Gilded Avenue, towards the Cranium Library. The bribers, with a clear search objective and relying on a broader psychic vision, completed their exploration of this magnificent library in just 1 day. He found 111 books, and besides the main materials for Sequence 8 inches Midnight Poet, and Sequence 9 inches Reader, a book that was not a potion material was his greatest gain. The Telema book. Telema in ancient Greek is written as theta e lemma, meaning, will. This book records the various mysteries of will. As Ning Lu perused this book, he couldn't help but think. Open black lens bracket. Most psychics refer to the art of tempering will as the layout of fate, while others call it Akasha. The shamans of the space wolves call it word, and the prophets of Shigori speak of mastering the endless storm. Only one uses the term telema, and that is the Thousand Suns, close black lens bracket. Ning Lu finished reading this book, written in letters and symbols distinct from Gothic, within a minute. Open black lens bracket him, the text within contains a peculiar charm and pattern, which will be of great help to Arsena's research into mystical languages. The symbols are also very special, understanding their mysteries should allow for the research of some runes. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu thought of the runes Magnus had comprehended from books and decided that he too should begin researching some runes to enhance will. Open black lens bracket. My children, with their strong senses, are easily influenced. Future warp corruption will be a huge challenge, and relying solely on their will to cope is somewhat left to chance. Researching runes and engraving them as decorations on the Legion's battle armor should slightly increase their will and improve their resistance to corruption, much like the small speed increasing runes of the Shigori's heaven shamans. The extent of this improvement will not be too great, but considering the future scale of the Legion, it will always have some effect. Close black lens bracket. The Gene Seed Primarch then thought of the mental techniques Magnus had comprehended and taught to his children. Open black lens bracket him, I can also comprehend my own mental techniques from this, and then teach them to my children, so they will no longer only temper their will through training, but also be able to actively use techniques to improve. When Magnus returns to the Imperium, I can exchange ideas with him for further improvement. Also, the unique mental techniques of the Eldar can be absorbed and incorporated to continuously refine the mental techniques I create. Close black lens bracket. Thinking of this, Ning Lu picked up the Telema book and said to Bradshaw, "Have the librarian send the 333 books I selected to my courtyard." In addition to potion materials, he also selected some books on monster lore, strange tales, and geography, which he would later give to Tierney for perusal. Upon returning to his courtyard, Ning Lu received the chieftain of the Terava tribe. Chapter 138, Terava Immigration. Ning Lu sat on the black alloy chair in the reception room, looking at Saul, the chieftain of the Terava tribe, who was in front of him. He had black hair, a softer facial structure, slightly high cheekbones, a broad nose, reddish-brown skin, and light gray eyes. Saul wore a gray robe adorned with runes resembling lightning and ore. He bowed. "Greetings to you, Genseed Primarch of the 11th Legion, Lord Ning Lu. It's a pleasure to meet you, Chieftain Saul. Please have some tea. This is black tea grown in sea cradle. Even the Emperor himself praised its excellent quality after tasting it. Before Saul came here, he had specifically gathered intelligence. Several versions of Ning Lu's meeting with the Emperor mentioned that the Genseed Primarch served the Emperor black tea, and the Emperor greatly admired its taste. My honor. Ning Lu chatted with Saul about the close cooperation between Terava and Huang Laohan, and after discussing the local customs and traditions of his territory for a while, he asked, "Why have you come to see me today?" Seeing the Genseed Primarch ask, Saul stated his purpose. "My lord, I hope to gain your support to escort Terava's colonization in the Pacific Star region." The Genseed Primarch's eyes were deep. His consciousness spread towards Saul, penetrating beyond a gate that resembled a furnace. He then understood the difficulties Terava faced and the chieftain's intentions. During the era of Terra's unification, the Terava tribe and Huang Laohan cooperated closely, but with the signing of the Olympia Treaty, their status was gradually replaced by the Mechanicus. Saul realized that he had to seek a new path. He decided to lead the Terava people out of Terra to colonize other worlds. The Terava people prepared for over a decade for this, but unfortunately, their first attempt at colonization ended in a major failure. The Terava colonial fleet encountered a powerful alien, a squid-like alien. Ultimately, the Terava people lost over half of their fleet, and the remaining ships fled back to Terra in disarray. The Terava people suffered a devastating defeat, not only consuming vast resources but also resulting in the deaths of countless tribesmen. This was a heavy blow. Open black lens bracket. The Terava people might have disappeared in the smoke of history due to the failure of interstellar colonization. Of course, it's also possible that they established their own colonies outside Terra but later lost contact with Terra. The planet they discovered was Tanis. Close black lens bracket. After Ning Lu saw the name of the world Tanis in Soul's mind, he immediately thought of the Tanis First and Only Regiment, and Gaunt, one of the 3 legendary Imperial Commissars. He also thought that the only main material needed for apprentice of the door pathway sequence 9 was the Null grub. Ning Lu remembered that the Null tree was a tree native to Tanis, and its main characteristic was that its roots would break through the soil to move itself, in order to receive as much sunlight and rain as possible. The accurate sense of direction of the local people of Tanis was precisely the result of their long-term constant movement through the Null tree forests. Null grubs lived within the soft bark of the Null tree. Open black lens bracket. The Null tree is also full of treasures. Its wood is one of the best quality woods in the entire Imperium. It can be used to make laser gun stocks, and it's also a solid material for building coffins and non-enhanced prosthetics. After Tanis was destroyed, Null tree wood even became a luxury item. The Null fruit produced by the Null tree is also edible. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu also learned the reason for Soul's request to see him from Soul's mind. Just as the Terava colonial fleet returned to Terra in disarray, Saul happened to hear that the Genseed Primarch had arrived on Terra. The series of glorious victories achieved by Ning Lu gave him an idea to request assistance from the Genseed Primarch. Lord Genseed Primarch, Terava ventured out of Terra not long ago. We discovered a new human colony, but we also encountered powerful aliens. They resemble squids, and we call them the Tellers. I hope you can provide us with assistance. In return, the Terava people will repay you with technology. We possess technology inherited from the Dark Age of technology. The Gene Seed Primarch was silent for several seconds, his mind rapidly spinning, iterating on his previously conceived plans with the information obtained through mind reading. A moment later, Ning Lu, with a smile, presented a proposal to Saul. Chieftain of Terava, I think you should know that I have just seized a star system, Tricon, from the barbaric Eldar Xenos. That star system has 5 Eldar maiden worlds, which are not only beautiful but also rich in minerals. Especially the main star, it can even establish a casting world. Arsena, understanding, immediately operated the data pad to show Saul the information on Tricon. Saul's light gray eyes were fixed on the data pad. Tricon main star was more suitable for Terava than Tanis, which they had discovered. Moreover, the Gene Seed Primarch showing him all of this was clearly not to boast, but to recruit. Saul asked in surprise, Lord Ning Lu, do you mean that Terava can go to Tricon main star to develop? Exactly, Ning Lu smiled and nodded, are you willing? Saul knew there was no free lunch, so he asked the Gene Seed Primarch. My lord, I am certainly willing, but what is the cost? It's very simple, Ning Lu said with a smile, obey my commands. Every activity of Terava within Tricon and my territory must be carried out according to my will. Saul frowned slightly, please elaborate. My development plan for Tricon main star will not come at the expense of the environment and future sustainable development. Your development projects must first pass approval. I also need Terava's technology, and I will also provide you with the technology discovered by my legion, such as the Flaos ether cannon technology. Saul fell silent. If it were before, he would not have agreed to Ning Lu's demands. Developing one's own world independently is better than being controlled by others. But the failure of the colonial fleet made him realize the cruelty of the galaxy. The aliens were more dangerous than he had anticipated. After several seconds, Saul made a decision to send some people to the Tricon system to develop under the protection of the powerful 11th Legion. At the same time, they would prepare to attempt another exploration and interstellar colonization. If the western part of the galaxy was dangerous, then they would change direction and head to the eastern part of the galaxy. Even if they suffered losses again, a branch of the tribe in Tricon would grow and thrive. Lord Ning Lu, I am willing to accept your terms. The Gene Seed Primarch, through mind reading, understood Saul's thoughts. He didn't mind it. Not putting all one's chips in one area and preparing a fallback is normal, unless one is at a dead end. It was enough for the Terava people to develop Tricon main star according to his requirements and provide him with the technology he needed. The crises they encountered in space would make them realize that submitting to him was the optimal choice. Send me the star chart to the world you discovered, and I will deal with the aliens. Besides the Null Grub, the Eyes of Thales were also the only potion needed for Spectator of the Dreamer, Pathway Sequence 9, and Tanis was a valuable world. Ning Lu decided to conquer Tanis and make it a strategic point for the 11th Legion in the Pacific Star region. In the days following the recruitment of the Terava immigrants, Ning Lu spent his days visiting various parts of Terra, searching for potion ingredients. In the evenings, he received visiting nobles, selecting 2 families to accept their allegiance. In his free time, he would study the contents of the Telema book. On the 11th day of his arrival on Terra, the Gene Seed Primarch received a report from Mars. The Rongguang Nuong class battleship being built for the 11th Legion had been completed and was entering its final testing phase. Thus, the selection of the captain for Ning Lu's future flagship was naturally put on the agenda. The Gene Seed Primarch could choose from among the Vostronia people, and Mikado also provided Ning Lu with 5 excellent candidates. Chapter 139, The Game, Flagship Captain Selected. On the first floor of the villa in the courtyard, after the Gene Seed Primarch browsed the profiles of the 5 captain candidates, he asked the original body servant. Arsena, what do you think of these 5? The original body servant raised his head and stated his thoughts. Lionel Torre, 42 years old, is the most distinguished of the 5. His family has a long history and is a powerful family on Terra. But Lionel himself is a typical traditional officer. From his command logs, it can be seen that his tactics are overly conservative. The result of seeking stability in every battle is winning battles where one's side has an advantage, but at a greater cost, unable to avoid losses that could have been avoided. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Arsena Dun's evaluation of Lionel was the same as his. Keep going. The reader had already absorbed the data from earlier into his mind and completed the analysis. He analyzed the background, strengths, and weaknesses of each candidate one by one, sometimes citing their battle examples as evidence. Diana Boland, 33 years old, is the most ordinary of the 5. Her family is not even considered powerful in the Sabatia Hive City. But Diana herself is extremely outstanding. She possesses an agile mind and has performed excellently in every position. In logistics, she demonstrated meticulousness, able to process information accurately, quickly, and clearly. When she coordinated the expedition fleet, she transported large numbers of soldiers from one node to another, ensuring they arrived on time, with full ammunition, ample rations, and proper support, everything in an orderly fashion. Arsena recalled the battle examples in the data slate. In battles against pirates and Xenos, her actions were swift, precise, and deadly, aligning with your thinking. Ning Lu tapped his finger lightly on the back of the chair, nodding in approval. She is indeed a suitable candidate. He did not necessarily have to choose one from the candidates, but if he did choose, he would choose a suitable person. Schedule a time. I want to meet her. 10 days later, Ning Lu met Diana Boland. She wore a neatly tailored military uniform with golden buttons arranged in order and 3 shining medals on her chest. Her golden hair was neatly tied back, and her deep eyes appeared even sharper against the backdrop of her military cap. Diana walked with agile steps, approaching the Gene Seed Primarch. Lord Ning Lu, Diana Boland reports for duty as ordered. The military department had not yet been established and would not officially begin operations until the eve of Uliner. Currently, both the Astartes and the Solar Auxilia only had ranks but no military titles. The Gene Seed Primarch noticed that Diana's blue-green eyes momentarily wanted to look away, but she pursed her lips, restraining her natural reaction, overcoming physiological instinct with willpower. Ning Lu nodded with satisfaction. Have a seat. Yes. Diana sat down with a straight back, only then noticing the 2 chess boards placed in front of her. Regicide, or go. Upon hearing this, Diana understood that the Gene Seed Primarch wanted her to choose, and this was a test for her. Regicide. Regicide is a chess-like game popular among all social strata, similar to international chess but played on a circular board. The pieces in Regicide include the Emperor, Queen, Prince, Priest, General, Steward, Fortress, Citizen, Warrior, and Knight. Diana explained, I've only had a slight exposure to Go. Regicide has a clear objective and a clear path: defeat the Emperor, and you win. But the Go board has no Emperor for the players to defeat. Or rather, there are many Emperors on the Go board. Let's begin. You go first. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Regicide was widely used for games among the Imperial Command, while Go would only become more popular among the future White Scars. With a gesture, Diana's expression was solemn as she picked up the general. The Gene Seed Primarch and the female commander started with quick moves, then slowed down. Diana's brows furrowed. Every move was within her expectation, yet she felt a sense of crisis, a feeling of unease. One more move, and you will lose. Ning Lu said in a low voice, I think you're going to use the priest to achieve the blind man's kill situation. Diana immediately became uneasy when the Gene Seed Primarch revealed her thoughts, but she used the pressure to calm down, examining the board piece by piece. A moment later, she gave a bitter smile and said helplessly, Your prince can make the traitors gamble at any moment. I've lost. Your performance is already excellent enough. The Gene Seed Primarch said with a smile. Even if Diana was excellent, she still had the limitations of a mortal. Her ability to calculate and deduce could not compare to his own. He looked at the dejected female commander. You will be the captain of my flagship. Immediately arrange the handover of your current duties. Diana was momentarily stunned. Before coming, she hadn't held much hope, and after losing the game, she had completely given up, not expecting such a sudden turn of events, that she would actually be appointed captain of the flagship by the Genseed Primarch. After a few seconds, she came back to her senses, rose from her seat, and said excitedly, "Lord Primarch, thank you for your trust in me. I will surely strive to serve you." Ning Lu nodded and spoke. "Arsena will send you the status of the 11th Legion. In the future, if you have free time, you can invest some effort and go. It can teach you to perceive threats from all directions and deal with various enemies. Considering all factors thoroughly and understanding the situation in a timely manner will make you a better commander." Diana pondered. "Understood, Lord. I will certainly devote my efforts to studying this in the future. Then, I look forward to our next game." At the same moment Ning Lu selected the flagship captain, in the upper hive of Iphigenia Hive City. A fine, misty gray rain fell. Tierney, his head covered by a black hood, looked like any other person strolling in the commercial district. But Marauder's seemingly aimless gaze was actually observing. Having undergone Astarte's visual controller organ surgery, he had a complete view of his surroundings, enhanced by excellent observation. Marauder suddenly stepped forward, walking towards a middle-aged man in a blue robe with a golden lion emblem on his chest. Carls, the patriarch of the Reina family, had just seen off the attendant sent by the hand imprinter to inspect the commercial district, and was now walking with his guards towards the airship docking area. As he rounded the corner of an accessories shop, a guard behind him, holding an umbrella, suddenly slipped, lost his balance, and stumbled. Marauder had anticipated this. His excellent observation had caught sight of a slight depression in the wet ground. Tierney predicted that someone among Carls's retinue would inevitably slip. And in that instant, the guards would be momentarily flustered, which would be his opportunity. Marauder slid forward, his nimble hands allowing him to maintain stability and flexibility in his wrist and fingers even at high speed. He extended his right hand towards Carls. Marauder effortlessly stole the key from Carls's inner pocket, a lion-shaped metal key, engraved with 13 runes. Carls was completely unaware. Seeing his guards regain order, he frowned and angrily rebuked them. Useless. At 11 o'clock at night, just as Carls was searching for the key in his bedroom and study, a dark figure silently climbed the Reina family's nest tower. Chapter 140, The Thief. Tierney ascended the nest tower, climbing up using the curved structures of the Gothic architectural flying buttresses. An ordinary person at such a height, even with sufficient courage, would not be able to maintain balance amidst the howling winds and cold rain laden with ash. But Tierney was nearing the end of his celestial path, far surpassing mortals. The gray rain was an excellent cover for the thief. Terra's toxic clouds felt familiar to him, just like his home, Vostronia. However, with the arrival of the monarch, the establishment of Exemplar City, and the emulation and changes in other hive cities, his homeland was becoming increasingly unfamiliar. Tierney even heard new recruits from the auxiliary army, those from the northernmost Nuriangmal hive city, mention that they had seen the sun in the upper nest, which was unimaginable for hive city dwellers of his era. As he pondered, the positioning runes on his helmet's faceplate glowed. Tierney stopped, and in an instant, he drew a dagger from his waist with his right hand. After becoming the thief, he had experimented with various weapons in the Void Hunter's training cage, ultimately finding that short swords and daggers were the most effective for him. Of course, for him, having undergone modification surgery, the length of a short sword was close to an ordinary person's long sword, and a dagger was close to a short sword. The thief twisted his wrist, and the dagger, like an extension of his body, plunged into the Rainier family's nest tower. Relying on his superhuman arm strength, he clung steadily to the outer wall of the nest tower, using extraordinary observation to observe the patrol patterns of the guards and the locations of the cameras inside the nest tower. After circling the nest tower once, the thief devised a plan of action. He silently counted the time, and after the patrol passed by again, he climbed onto the windowsill. The thief's large hand inserted the tip of his dagger into the crack of the balcony door, and with a gentle flick of his wrist, he opened the latch. Opening the window, flipping over, and closing the window while landing simultaneously. The thief's movements were fluid, like flowing clouds and water, his massive body making no sound. Upon landing, the thief immediately crouched low, avoiding the cameras, and quickly arrived at the location marked by the helmet's eyepiece runes, the Rainier family's library. This was not the thief's first infiltration of the Rainier family's nest tower. He had previously successfully stolen the nest tower's blueprints, pinpointing the library's location. The book he was looking for was most likely in the family library. Considering that it was written during the long old night, and Terra's environment was vastly different now, it would not hold much value for the current Rainier family, making it unlikely to be placed in Carl's study. The thief extended his left arm behind his back, and, agile hand, pulled open the gray zipper of his black backpack in an awkward posture for an ordinary person, pulling out the Rainier family's keycard. He inserted the keycard into the cogitator, and after a series of green runes lit up, the golden door slowly opened. Tierney pulled out the keycard and slipped into the library. As soon as he stepped into the library, his psychic vision was immediately stirred. Observing the environment was a smaller and less important aspect of exceptional observation. For the thief, its greater use was to immediately detect the most valuable items when facing many objects. As the golden door slowly closed, the thief had already swept past the first row of bookshelves. He quickly arrived at shelf A3, reinserted his dagger into his waist tactical pouch, and then pulled out a thread-bound book from hundreds of books. After quickly flipping through a dozen pages, he found it was a geographical gazetteer. Although it wasn't his target for this trip, he still put it into his backpack. As soon as the book was placed in his backpack, he felt as if something inside him had melted, and his steps became lighter. The thief continued his steps, heading directly to the next target. After looking through 9 books in a row, Tierney still hadn't found the book. Open black lens bracket. Could it be that the book isn't considered highly valuable? If so, that's troublesome. The Rainier family's paper collection numbers over 100,000 books. Flipping through them one by one would take a lot of time. Close black lens bracket. The thief, guided by exceptional observation, found the 11th book. When he opened it and saw the title, Monster Compendium, he continued to flip through it. When he reached the 33rd page, his fingers stopped. Unlike every monster before, this page had no illustration. Open black lens bracket. 8-legged black wolf. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. He is a living shadow born from the abyss of eternal night. He is the void of darkness that devours all existence. Only the most foolish will look directly at his form. The eyeballs of those foolish people will seep black blood, and they will die amidst the whispers echoing in their ears. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Close black lens bracket. Tierney's eyes lit up. The monster described on this page most closely matched the characteristics of the mythological creature he had investigated, which was most closely related to darkness. Open black lens bracket. The intelligence was correct. Compared to those half-imagined, half-created compendiums, this one collected by the Rainier family indeed contains useful information. The name of the monster, detailed information. It is said that the author of this book, Concepcion Perea, once saw a creature shrouded in darkness, which was indeed true. Close black lens bracket. Tierney immediately put the Monster Compendium into his backpack, then quickly moved between other bookshelves, placing the most valuable books into his backpack one by one. Suddenly, his black eyes moved, the thief's psychic vision was stirred. The thief immediately went to the bookshelf and pulled out the book written on parchment, Sealed Golden Age, a book that catalogued 23 stunning ancient tombs across the 5 continents of Terra. Tierney put Sealed Golden Age into his backpack, placing it with the Monster Compendium. With his backpack full, the thief went to the golden door and listened intently. Psychic vision can penetrate non-sentient barriers to see aura colors, but this is closely related to one's own level. The thief could not see the color of auras through obstacles, only listen using Lehman's ear. Tierney heard footsteps, then heard the footsteps depart, and then used the keycard to open the door and return the way he came. Early the next morning, Ning Lu received the Monster Compendium before leaving. He turned to the page of the eight-legged black wolf. Open black lens bracket eight-legged black wolf, the mythical creature form of the darkness pathway is the eight-legged black wolf. This is no coincidence. This eight-legged black wolf should be the mythical creature of the darkness pathway. However, finding him will be no easy feat. The authority of the darkness pathway is secrecy, and mythical creatures already possess some of its characteristics. One can only hope the eight-legged black wolf is not a sequence 2-level creature. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's eyes were fixed on the page, carefully studying the information on the eight-legged black wolf. Open black lens bracket. Wherever the eight-legged black wolf appears, people always fall into deep slumber. But there is no record of fear, and its form is clear. It should be a sequence 4-level mythical creature. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu reached a conclusion and continued to look at the records of its appearance and disappearance. Open black lens bracket. The eight-legged black wolf arrived with the moon. It flew towards the bright moon. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Does this simply mean it appears at night, or is it related to the moon? A sequence 4 mythical creature should not have the ability to travel between Terra and the moon, but Mikado said it has followers. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu found it difficult to draw a conclusion. After pondering for a moment, he gave an order to Tierney. Send some people to the moon. Besides the eight-legged black wolf, pay attention to other things as well. He was determined to acquire the primeval mother, but the current treasure hunting team could not complete this task. Acting rashly might lead to unpredictable changes. Those dilapidated domes are also glorious ruins where valuable items can be found. While you are acting, you must also record detailed maps of the terrain and landforms. Not just on the moon, but in other places as well. Ning Lu added, saying that these were incidental tasks, but might prove useful at some point in the future. Then, he took Sealed Golden Age, and found that this book was the main material for the omniscient subsequent Sequence 8, Archaeologist. Besides this book, he had previously found 16 other similar books in various libraries, all of which were also main materials for the Archaeologist. On the 28th day of the Gene Seed Primarch's arrival on Terra, he received news from Mars that all projects for his Rongguang Nuong class battleship had passed inspection. He waited 2 more days, and after completing all matters on Terra, he boarded the Void Hunter and set sail for Mars. Chapter 141 Glory Queen Class Battleship. On the Void Hunter, Ning Lu, Arsena Dunn, and Diana Bolin stood before the observation window, looking at the colossal object that was drawing closer. Every warship in the Mars shipyards and spaceports paled in comparison to it. It was more powerful and formidable than any other warship. What a perfect creation, it is perfect, possessing destructive power. Diana's blue-green eyes were fixed on the giant ship in the void, her eyes brimming with excitement as she spoke. It's like a giant void whale surfacing, or a massive black halberd. As per Ning Lu's request, conveyed to Mars by Rozicki, the entire Rongguang Nuong class battleship was painted black. Its spine was covered with over 1,000 hill-like defensive turrets and engine shrouds, and its underbelly shimmered with the glow of world-destroying weapons. It had an enormous, pear-shaped ramming prow and city-sized engine arrays on its exterior. The Glory Queen class battleship was one of the most powerful warships built by the Imperium. Its hull was defended by multiple layers of void shields, and its surface armor was also extremely thick, capable of withstanding intense bombardment while still retaining combat effectiveness. Within the Space Marine Legions, the Glory Queen class battleship typically served a dual role as both the fleet flagship and the Primarch's personal vessel. The thought of commanding this mighty warship across the stars, serving as the commander of the 33rd Expedition Fleet's flagship, and dedicating herself to the Gene Seed Primarch, filled Diana with boundless honor. This was far more exhilarating than when she had purged alien pirates or received commendations for her achievements. A moment later, the Void Hunter docked at the spaceport. Ning Lu disembarked from the deck and immediately saw the Mars sage in red robes awaiting him, with Roziki Chek, whom he hadn't seen in a long time, standing beside him. The tech sergeant wore black power armor, with the mark of Mars emblazoned on his shoulders. The red-robed sage approached Ning Lu, and his vocal synthesizer emitted a hoarse voice. Requesting exchange of 11th Legion information regarding delivery obligations. Granted. Roziki's left eye had been replaced with a bionic one. He and the Mars sage exchanged glances, then jointly emitted a series of high-frequency binary signals, after which they both nodded in satisfaction. Gene Seed Primarch, your warship has been completed. At this time, Mars can deliver the stipulated construction responsibilities and obligations to you. Please confirm if you accept receipt of the warship. Authorized delivery. Ning Lu spoke, and Roziki performed another binary authentication with the sage. A moment later, the sage bowed to Ning Lu and then withdrew. Roziki walked up to Ning Lu. Father, I have completed my studies on Mars. From this day forward, you are the chief forgemaster of the Legion, commanding all tech sergeants. Father, I will do my utmost not to disappoint you. Let's go, let's see my flagship. Roziki spoke. Father, please follow me. He then led the way and began to introduce it. This Rongguang Nuong class battleship is 28.11 kilometers long and weighs 170.33 trillion tons. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Robert Gilliman's Macraga's Honor was 26 kilometers long. His flagship, at 28 kilometers, was considered quite large among the Primarchs. The required crew is approximately 309,100. With about 103,000 flight and logistics personnel. Ning Lu nodded slightly and asked the female commander behind him. Diana, are you ready? The female commander's blue-green eyes sparkled with excitement, and she said confidently. My lord, I am ready. Ning Lu followed Roziki into the Rongguang Nuong class battleship, heading towards the command bridge. They ascended in an elevator, and their vision showed deck after deck rising along the curved inner wall, with dark metal pillars supporting the entire arched structure. After exiting the elevator, an astonishingly large bulletproof glass ceiling came into view. In the core area of the bridge, 5 strategic tables displayed flickering holographic projections, showing scenes of the Mars birth and within the solar system. Lumen lamps slowly rotated overhead, illuminating countless displays and viewports all around. Father, please take your seat. Roziki turned and said to Ning Lu. Ning Lu walked to the black alloy throne prepared for him. After the Gene Seed Primarch was seated, Diana spoke. My Lord Primarch, you should name this vessel Wangquan Shadow. After a moment of thought, Diana immediately understood its meaning. The name my lord has given this vessel is most fitting. You are the monarch of Vostronia, and your legion is named Order Shadows. Since being chosen as the flagship's captain, Diana had used this time to collect and read everything she could find about the Gene Seed Primarch and the 11th Legion. Ning Lu had landed on Vostronia, unified the homeworld, and became its monarch, renaming the Reaper to Order Shadows. Diana immediately grasped the profound meaning behind Ning Lu's naming, and she praised him. Worthy Shadow, it suits your flagship. Since the captain also finds it suitable, then begin to fulfill your duties. As you wish. Diana bowed in acknowledgement, then walked to her workstation with lighter steps than usual in her black high-heeled boots. The captain picked up the comms unit and skillfully found the ship's command channel. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the first captain of this Glory Queen class battleship, just named Wangquan Shadow by the Gene Seed Primarch. I am pleased to work with all of you from now on. Please prepare your briefings. In 3 hours, I will hear your reports in the conference hall. Seeing Diana decisively take over the Wangquan Shadow, Ning Lu said to Roziki. Take me to the palace. Father, please follow me. Taking the lift, Ning Lu proceeded to his palace. After exiting the lift, a covered bridge appeared before the Gene Seed Primarch. The interior of the covered bridge was ornately decorated, with soaring arches, resembling the nave of a grand cathedral, solemn and dignified. Ning Lu stopped and said to the honor guard members, "From now on, this place will be your responsibility." The honor guard all puffed out their chests, and they responded in unison. "Yes, Father." Ning Lu then said to Roziki, "You wait outside first. After 5 minutes, you can come in." A moment later, Roziki Chek, who had been promoted to archaeologist, bowed and said, "Father, I will do my utmost to fulfill my responsibilities as chief forgemaster and archaeologist." 3 days later, Hollis of the 1st Battle Group and Bradshaw of the 11th Battle Group were ordered to go to the moon. The plans submitted by the 2 Order Shadows had been approved by Ning Lu. They would be responsible for training the Terran recruits of the 11th Legion. Horus had not sent his sons to the moon to train new recruits, and Ning Lu was the first, naturally attracting widespread attention. Just as the Selena Gene cult and many other factions turned their attention to the 2 Order Shadows, 50 members of the treasure hunting team seized the opportunity to infiltrate the moon. 2 months later, 6 battle groups arrived in the solar system as ordered. The Gene Seed Primarch convened a meeting to discuss the plan for conquering the Round Spider Alliance. Chapter 142, War Council of the Black Duke Court. King Power Shadow, Conference Room. The armored glass dome and the blinds of numerous windows slowly descended, while the runes of the shielding device lit up, operating at maximum power. The Gene Seed Primarch sat high on a black throne atop a white marble platform. Slightly lower on either side sat his original body servant, Arsena Dunn, and the flagship captain, Diana Bolin. Attendees of the War Council included not only battle group commanders and company captains from various battle groups, but also squad leaders, and even Astartes who did not hold command positions. These Legion warriors all shared one characteristic: they were all extraordinary. Across the 6 battle groups, there were currently 331 Order Shadows who had become extraordinary beings. Ning Lu's overall plan for the Legion's future extraordinary beings was for each battle group to focus on a core pathway, supplemented by an appropriate number of extraordinary individuals. Developing a unique tactical style required a certain number of extraordinary beings, while extraordinary beings from other pathways would utilize their special abilities in various situations. Currently, his plan was still in its first phase. He had already determined the focus for the 4th, 7th, and 11th battle groups among the 6 groups mobilized for this operation. The core pathway for the 4th battle group was the Death Pathway. Death Lord Adams was currently a Sequence 9 corpse collector. The core pathway for the 7th battle group was the Red Priest. Reaper Lord Sanchez was currently a Sequence 9 hunter. Given that Sequence 5 of the Red Priest pathway was Reapers, Ning Lu bestowed the name of the Legion from before his return upon this battle group. Although Ning Lu had determined the core pathway for the 11th battle group to be the Black Emperor pathway, he was not satisfied with Lord Christian's abilities. His abilities were inferior to Adams and Sanchez, lacking the qualities that would impress the Gene Seed Primarch. Christian was cultivated into a Sequence 9 lawyer because he fulfilled the Gene Seed Primarch's requirements, leading the 11th battle group to complete its transformation. However, in Ning Lu's heart, he hoped for more outstanding descendants to emerge in the future. As for the other 3 battle groups, Ning Lu had not yet clarified their core pathways, also because the abilities of their 3 lords were not outstanding enough. However, given that they also completed their missions and passed the loyalty test, meeting the Gene Seed Primarch's threshold for extraordinary beings among his descendants, they were all cultivated into lawyers. The Order Shadows sat centered around the Gene Seed Primarch. After Ning Lu listened to the briefings from the 6 lords, he spoke. "You have all performed my tasks very well and have put into practice the principles I demanded." After a word of encouragement, the Gene Seed Primarch turned his gaze to the Reaper Lord. "Among you, Sanchez has performed most outstandingly. Your ambush plan was highly effective and quickly dealt with the Savage Wilderness Spirit clan. I have decided to bestow a reward upon you. Mars forged a flagship for me, and the relic-class battleship Void Hunter, gifted to me by the Emperor, I now bestow upon you. I hope you will make good use of this battleship to hunt more enemies. The Reaper Lord, who had received this additional commendation from his Gene father, immediately rose and solemnly stated, "Father, I will certainly make good use of the battleship you have bestowed upon me to hunt more enemies for you." Ning Lu nodded slightly, looking at his other descendants. They all looked at Sanchez enviously. What they envied was not only the Relic-class battleship's ultra-long range, but also that this battleship had once been the Gene Father's flagship. After Sanchez sat down, the Gene Seed Primarch smiled and said, "Countless wars await you in the future, you all still have opportunities. Battleships, weapons, armor, etc., as long as you perform well, I will reward you. Now, your opportunity has arrived. I have summoned you this time, and our target is the Round Spider Alliance." Hearing Ning Lu's words, the original body servant raised the control staff in his hand. The runes on the holographic projection device flickered, and a star map unfolded before everyone. The Gene Seed Primarch then spoke, telling his descendants what he knew about the Round Spider Alliance. The rulers of the Round Spider Alliance are the techno-nobility. Their supreme leaders are called Steel Lords, and they live in towering structures like small mountains, ruling these planets by virtue of the various technologies they possess. Although they revere technology, their armed forces are far inferior to the Mechanicus. It is worth noting that the star systems are connected by ancient warp gates of unknown origin. Unlike previous operations, our primary objective is not to capture the towers and control the Steel Lords and techno-nobility. Ning Lu would not repeat the mistakes of the Imperial Fists from his memories, emphasizing the strategic focus of this operation. Our objective is those ancient warp gates. In the first wave of attack, we must simultaneously control these warp gates. Once the techno-nobility realize they cannot resist our offensive, they will detonate the warp gates, and the entire star system will vanish in explosion and flash. Moreover, the warp gate technology holds extremely high strategic value. When warp storms block navigation, the Round Spider Alliance's star systems can still maintain contact with each other precisely because of this technology. In Ning Lu's mind, the most valuable asset of the Round Spider Alliance was Necromunda, with the warp gates ranking second in value, considering the possibility that they might not be able to study and replicate the technology. If it could be replicated, the warp gate technology would undoubtedly rank first. The Gene Seed Primarch looked at everyone. Do you have the confidence to simultaneously control all the warp gates and achieve the strategic objective? In the past, the 11th Legion fought independently, with even individual companies struggling to coordinate. Although he had reshaped the Legion's culture, it had been a short time, and cross-stellar system, cross-battle group coordinated combat remained a challenge. If his descendants lacked confidence, he would wait until the divination dice was fully charged and use it for divination. The eyes of the six lords met, and they read confidence in each other's gazes, speaking in unison. "Father, we can complete your mission." Ning Lu looked behind them. "Chesney, I want to hear the opinions of the Black Duke Court members." The Baron, whose right shoulder bore the skull emblem of the 4th Battle Group and who served as 1st Company Captain, spoke. "The Order Shadows are now a unified entity. We can carry out your command. I believe that when the court members return to their respective teams, they will also convey your directive that the warp gates are the primary objective to every level of the Legion." Ning Lu's gaze swept over all the members of the Black Duke Court. Having members of different levels of the court convey his directives to their respective tiers was precisely one of his purposes in summoning all court members. After a moment of thought, the Gene Seed Primarch decided to trust his descendants. "In that case, depart immediately after the meeting." Father Rozicki, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. "I have a way to interfere with the warp gates, which might prevent the enemy from detonating them." The Gene Seed Primarch turned his gaze to the Chief Forgemaster. "What method?" "When I was on Mars, I participated in the research and development of New Astarte's armor. This project was called Terminator. Because this armor is somewhat cumbersome, teleportation technology will be added to it." Ning Lu nodded slightly. He knew that the Empire would gradually equip various legions with Terminator armor after the Great Crusade, so research must have already begun. I gained a considerable understanding of teleportation technology during my research. Rosicki, who was then an omniscient, said confidently. Although the teleportation device and the Round Spider Alliance's warp gates may differ slightly in technology, their principles should be similar. Detonating the warp gates will also inevitably involve overloading energy. I can research this aspect and design targeted interference devices to at least buy time when the enemy detonates them. After the meeting, you will immediately begin your research. Ning Lu said. If the interference device research was successful, his strategic plan would be more secure. The Gene Seed Primarch considered that if the Round Spider Alliance launched a counterattack, there might be casualties among the Legion warriors guarding the warp gates. He decided to establish special regulations for 11th Legion Command starting now. From now on, if any Legion commander at any level falls in battle, their adjutant will take over. If the adjutant is not in the combat zone, or if the adjutant falls, the highest-ranking member of the court will assume command. The system Ning Lu established was similar to the Dark Angels, but with unique aspects. Arsena immediately noted the Gene Seed Primarch's orders, to be distributed to the other 6 battle groups after the meeting. Subsequently, Ning Lu and the Lords formulated a preliminary war plan. After the meeting, he kept Arsena and Adams. Chapter 143, The Eye of Secrets. Ning Lu activated his psychic vision and confirmed with Adams that he had digested the Corpse Collector potion before speaking. 10 minutes from now, come to my palace office to see me. A moment later, the Gene Seed Primarch looked at the Death Lord before him. Even without touching Adams's body, he could keenly sense that the gravedigger's body was cold, like a corpse buried deep underground. Open black lens bracket. If he were mixed in with a pile of corpses, no one would notice his difference. When Adams was a Sequence 9 corpse collector, his body temperature didn't drop much because of his Astarte's superhuman physique. After advancing to the gravedigger, his temperature dropped significantly. Was this the effect of the cold stone in the potion ingredients? Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu pondered, then said to the gravedigger. The tomb of the Steel Lord of the Round Spider Alliance is the key to your mastery of power. Father, I understand. I will dig up all the Steel Lords' tombs and send all the peculiar items inside to you. Adams calmly stated, the special items I collected earlier arrived with me on the King Power Shadow. They will be delivered to your palace shortly. Ning Lu nodded slightly. Not only the 4th battle group, but the special spoils of war from the other 5 battle groups were also being unloaded. Open black lens bracket. There should be many potion ingredients among them. I hope to gather enough for a new potion. Close black lens bracket. After the Death Lord left, Ning Lu called Arsena in. How is the research on occult languages progressing? My lord, significant breakthroughs have been made. The languages of past human civilizations found in the Terra Library, the mystical languages within the Telema book, and the data and research results provided by Lord Thomas have completed the missing part. The reader spoke, operating a data pad to show Ning Lu a page with 11 symbols. The bribers looked at them. Among the symbols, there was one he was familiar with, an arrow-like symbol, which in the runic alphabet meant, divine name. Runic letters, also known as runes, are widely used in Imperial weaponry. Every chainsword and power sword manufactured in Vostronia is engraved with them. Ning Lu opened his mouth and pronounced, Tiwaz, according to Arsena's phonetic transcription. The Gene Seed Primarch keenly felt an invisible yet perceptible mystical force surging as he spoke. Your research is correct, Ning Lu praised. My lord, I have found a total of 12 runic letters, 3 of which are from ancient Terra. Only in the earliest versions do this symbol and pronunciation contain mystical power. My further research has found that, like this runic letter, there are 10 other symbols that are special. What is special about them? Arsena did not answer immediately. He tapped his finger lightly on the data pad, and the page changed to another, which contained 33 symbols. Ning Lu also saw some familiar symbols on this page. He pronounced one of the X-shaped symbols, Jiao. The bribers felt an invisible power brewing, but it did not surge. The Gene Seed Primarch remained silent for a few seconds, comparing the differences between the two symbols, then asked. Complete and incomplete. My lord indeed sees through the minutiae, that is precisely it. The silver-haired Arsena sighed with emotion before continuing. The 11 letters I showed you first, I call core runes. Every word must contain at least one of them and begin with it. The 33 letters you see now, I call auxiliary runes. In words, they follow the core letter. If a word begins with them, no power can be invoked. The reader continued to slide his finger while speaking. The first version of the vocabulary list I compiled contains a total of 1,133 words. Ning Lu's gaze swept over, seeing the words composed of letters containing mystical power, and their corresponding meanings. Open black lens bracket, grace. Sacrifice. Close black lens bracket. After scanning through them, the Gene Seed Primarch committed all these words to memory. His mind raced, combining words into sentences of varying lengths. Open black lens bracket. They can barely be combined into ritualistic sentences, but they are too brief and their meaning is not clear enough. It would be difficult to achieve an effect with ritualistic prayers using them. Close black lens bracket. After several minutes, Ning Lu spoke. Your approach is correct. Continue to supplement and enrich the vocabulary list. As you command, my lord. After the reader left, Ning Lu received a report from a member of the honor guard that the items sent by the various battle groups had been placed in his private treasury. The Gene Seed Primarch then rose and went to the treasury to inspect them. At the same moment, in the crystal mirage, Thomas, who had assisted Arsena and made significant contributions to the research of occult words, arrived before the crystal statue mentioned by the original body servant. Compared to other battle group commanders, the seer's conquest progress was much slower. He had been carrying out Ning Lu's special mission, researching the worship of the Heart Slayer in the crystal mirage and surrounding star systems. Thomas discovered a nearby star system in the direction of Vostronia. During the conquest, he found the same worship, the worship of the Heart Slayer, in the beliefs of 6 indigenous tribes. The seer studied the language of the indigenous people, compiled the research results into a report, and recorded it in data crystals produced in the crystal mirage. It was then sent by supply ship to Vostronia, eventually reaching the original body servant, making a significant contribution to the birth of occult languages. After mastering the local language, the seer also researched ritual procedures and prayer phrases, achieving initial results. He had gained a certain understanding of the Heart Slayer. Now, he stood before the blurred, unidentifiable statue to verify his research. The seer activated his Eye of Secrets, and his eyes instantly turned deep, looking at the statue. In an instant, his spirituality rapidly drained, and at the same time, a blurry figure appeared in his eyes, and whispering murmurs sounded in his ears. Thomas, Reapers, go forth and kill, offer me blood and sacrifices, and you will gain great power. Order Shadows raised his hand and pressed his temples, alleviating the discomfort of rapidly draining spirituality. Not interested. The whispering ceased for 6 milliseconds before starting again, and at the same time, a cold wind inexplicably blew through the cave. You will gain knowledge, secret knowledge that no one has ever known. You can see more, discover the mysteries of the supernatural world. The seer's eyes flickered slightly. His spirituality accelerated its consumption, and countless mystical visions flashed through his eyes, containing mysteries he had never perceived or known. The seer instinctively felt a hint of longing. At this moment, the owner of the whispering seemed to notice. Serve me, I am the Heart Slayer. I refuse. His spirituality exhausted, the seer closed his Eye of Secrets, and everything instantly vanished. Open black lens bracket. I will never betray my Gene Father and serve anyone, any entity. Moreover, the abilities my father bestowed upon me are more powerful and mysterious than yours. Close black lens bracket. As Order Shadows flatly refused the Slanesh Great Demon, Ning Lu also completed his inspection of the spoils of war. Among them, he joyfully found a white, eye-shaped brain tissue. Open black lens bracket. This is the main material for Sequence 8 Reasoning student. After his advancement, Arsena, as a master of reasoning and ritual magic, should see a significant increase in his progress in studying occult languages. Close black lens bracket. The 11th Legion's fleet sailed for 4 weeks before reaching its destination, the area controlled by the Round Spider Alliance. Chapter 144, The Powerful Glory Queen Class Battleship. Necromunda System. Numerous void ships, like slender black sharks, leapt forth, with swarms of smaller vessels, frigates, pioneer scouts, fleet liaison ships, and gunboats, following their main battleships. The King Power Shadow held the center, while guard destroyer, repair ships, liaison ships, and shuttles quickly dispersed, moving about its shadow and the various parts of its magnificent hull-like plankton around a giant whale. The 4th Battle Group frigates, painted with almost invisible Legion insignia on one side and skulls on the other, led the charge. Their machine spirits yearned to hunt first, followed by the battle group's main battleships. Swarms of black warships spread out, forming an assault formation, with firing angles covering all directions. King Power Shadow, Bridge. Lady Captain Diana Bolin, authorized to command the space battle of Necromunda, looked at Ning Lu. Gene Seed Primarch, we are ready. Attack. Diana's gaze returned to her console, all screens filled with signals. Do it, Chief Forgemaster. The Lady Captain's voice was strong. Her eyes were fixed on the screen directly in front of her, watching the first attack of this Rongwang Nuwang battleship. An officer, more than half of whose head had been converted to brass, abruptly pulled a lever, then spun his chair to face forward. The King Power Shadow's bow lights fired simultaneously, a dazzling flash piercing the engine of the locked, flame-spitting enemy ship. The target exploded with a roar, and a chain reaction tore it to pieces. The explosion immediately spread to the fuel tanks, and the enemy ship was lifted by the airflow, tumbling uncontrollably in the void. The blonde Lady Captain clenched her fists. Even though she had commanded dozens of space battles of different scales, she couldn't help but be shocked by the King Power Shadow's powerful firepower. With one attack, the bow's lance weapon tore apart an unprotected cruiser-class enemy ship. Lance weapon recharging. Turn. Left turn 338, inclination 1 forward. The output power of the King Power Shadow's right side real space engine suddenly surged. The Black Void Behemoth drew an arc in the void, its starboard guns aimed at the incoming Round Spider Alliance warships. Target locked. Fire. The King Power Shadow's neatly arranged starboard broadside guns roared in unison, spewing dense barrages into the dark void. Numerous enemy ships suffered devastating macro cannon strikes, and explosions erupted like tides, one after another. Enemy ship destroyed. Enemy ship destroyed. Quote. The gunners' reports were filled with undisguised pride and joy, their cannons were so powerful. Turn. Right 142, inclination 3. Even with a rapid turn, the King Power Shadow remained unhurried, as if the enemy ships rushing towards it were merely annoying insects. The enemy's gunfire was blocked by the shimmering void shield, like moths drawn to a flame, shining brightly before vanishing. Macro cannon barrages struck the enemy ships directly, and fireworks bloomed in Necromunda's void. The Round Spider Alliance's warship commanders, with their cybernetically enhanced brains, were overwhelmed with loss reports. The scan data shocked the techno-nobility, the enemy ships' firepower exceeded their imagination. Their warships were like prey encountering a terrifying giant spirit spider. The Round Spider Alliance's command network immediately fell into chaos. They had never encountered such a powerful enemy, nor had they ever imagined such a massive, powerful void warship. Compared to that void behemoth, their warships were like cyber toys. The techno-nobility reached different conclusions based on the varying data captured by their respective cybernetic engines. Some techno-nobility believed they should retreat immediately and establish a defensive line using Necromunda's orbital defense facilities. Another portion of the techno-nobility concluded from cybernetic readings that orbital defenses could not resist the Black Behemoth. Their only option was to pass through the warp gate to other star systems, gather all warships, and launch a desperate attack on the enemy ship. The Round Spider Alliance's warships scattered in different directions, like spiders slipping on a mirror. The warships retreating to orbit were not intercepted, but those heading for the warp gate collided with the 4th Battle Group's assault force. All screens before Diana were filled with signals, as the fleets of both sides spread out across the vast void, the molten bones of destroyed starships radiating dazzling light. Black escort ships with damaged engines burst forth with blue-white flames, streaking between the magnificent cruisers like ignited firecrackers. Larger frigates and destroyers activated their shimmering void shields, smashing through the scattered debris and charging into the Round Spider Alliance's warships. Lance weapons spewed crystalline, lethal energy, and broadside weapons unleashed dense barrages. After surveying the situation, the Lady Captain reported to the Genseed Primarch. Genseed Primarch, the battle is proceeding exactly as anticipated. Enemy ships are blocked outside the cordon, and capital ships are deployed before each warp gate. As of now, 4 capital ships have reached strategic points A, C, and D, and have completed their deployment in their designated positions. After the 11th Battle Group warped into the Necromunda system, the Chief Forgemaster personally commanded the scanners to scan all the warp gates in the entire system. The Round Spider Alliance had established 13 warp gates in the Necromunda system, concentrated in 5 areas, forming a rough pentagram shape centered around the star. Combined with Ning Lu's understanding of the Round Spider Alliance, it could be confirmed that the 5 areas led to 5 other star systems. This matched the situation deduced from genetic intelligence during the previous War Council. The 11th Battle Group's warships launched their attack according to the previous war plan, and progress was currently smooth. The other 5 battle groups made even smoother progress. The space forces in the other 5 star systems, in terms of both warship numbers and firepower, were inferior to Spider Star. The fleets of each battle group, following the Genseed Primarch's orders, charged directly towards the warp gates. Enemy ships in their path were crushed and destroyed. The Void Hunter, under Sanchez's command, even completed its hunt swiftly. The ancient Relic-class battleship blasted the fragile system fleets into dust before they could launch a counterattack. After the 5 battle groups' capital ships completed their deployment at the warp gates, frigates and destroyers began to pursue the remaining enemy fleets. The battle progressed smoothly. The enemy had already lost the warp gates before deciding to fight to the death, and the warp interference devices carried by each ship, researched by Rozicki Czech, didn't even have a chance to activate. King Power Shadow, Ning Lu lightly tapped the back of the command throne. Proceed to the nearest uncontrolled area. Yes, Genseed Primarch. Engine Prophet, target strategic point E, full power ahead. Diana's eyes were fixed on the holographic image, watching the King Power Shadow's trajectory through the void. The Lady Captain was also monitoring the entire battle. She had experienced several space battles of similar scale, and managing this situation was exceptionally easy, especially since she was now commanding a powerful warship. Diana's blue-green eyes absorbed the information flickering across all the screens. Suddenly, her pupils constricted. She noticed a fleet bypassing the battlefield, suddenly emerging from the asteroid belt around the star, heading towards strategic point B. The Lady Captain's mind raced, and she realized that no fleet could intercept them. Chapter 145, Controlling the Portal. Chief Forgemaster, activate the teleportation jamming device immediately. Diana shouted anxiously, clenching her fists. She absolutely did not want her first battle as the Genseed Primarch's flagship captain to have any major flaws. However, with hundreds of enemy ships, she was truly unable to pinpoint the location of every single one or track their movements. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be a major issue, a single fleet couldn't turn the tide. But the Genseed Primarch had warned that the enemy might detonate the portal. Now, she could only place her hope in the Chief Forgemaster's teleportation jamming device. Starting teleportation jamming device. Rozicki's calm and powerful voice came through the comms, easing the Lady Captain's tension. Forging deck. The Chief Forgemaster's shoulder pads were painted red, signifying his close connection to Mars. Other legions' tech sergeants would paint their armor red to indicate their close ties to Mars, but the Order Shadows did not, they only painted their shoulder pads red. The mechanical prosthetics on Rosicki's back extended, inserting into the silver, nightmech-sized machine in front of him. The silver machine was spherical, covered in dense runes and binary techno-arcana. The lights throughout the King Power Shadow instantly dimmed. Activating the jamming device required immense energy, so lower priority lighting systems were redirected to the forging deck to power the silver machine. The techno-arcana lit up in a regular, sequential pattern, and runes were activated one by one, causing the silver machine to glow brilliantly. Inside one of the Chief Forgemaster's bionic eyes, energy readings rapidly climbed. In Rosicki's inspiration, an invisible force erupted. He shifted his gaze to the holographic image above the jamming device, which marked the portal area as strategic point B. With the jamming device activated, an energy shockwave quickly spread throughout the entire Necromunda system. The round Spider Alliance's portals were shaped like complete rings. 8 folded mechanical branches extended outwards from the ring, bending at their central nodes like spider legs. This was an abstract symbol formed after nearly 10 millennia of spider worship in Necromunda, the round spider emblem, which commonly appeared in various round Spider Alliance structures. The ring-shaped energy devices embedded at the bending nodes of the 8 spider legs began to flicker rapidly, alternately brightening and dimming. Portals require immense energy for inter-system teleportation. The round Spider Alliance's portals were built around stars, gathering solar energy through unique energy devices to power the portals. Rosicki's designed jamming device's function was to disrupt the gathering and transmission of energy. The energy pulse sweeping across the entire system disrupted the portal's energy device's process of gathering energy. 5 energy devices ultimately extinguished. The next instant, the dense data crystals on the 8 spider legs flickered wildly. The round Spider Alliance did not use runes like the Human Empire, but instead largely employed data crystals to achieve functions like activation and control. Tens of seconds later, large sections of data crystals went dark, and the light flickering within the ring spread outwards like ripples from a skipped stone. The 3 round Spider Alliance warships that had arrived were caught in the energy wave like prey stuck in a spiderweb, immobilized. Data streams pulsed across the Chief Forgemaster's bionic eye. He completed his analysis within seconds and spoke into the command comms channel. Portal B is incapacitated. Estimated duration: 5 hours and 11 minutes, ship standard time. Enemy ships are caught in the energy burst, in a static state. Estimated duration: 2 hours and 33 minutes, ship standard time. The energy storm's current range is 152,000 kilometers, expected to shrink to 84,000 kilometers in 1 hour. Diana breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this, offering praise. Chief Forgemaster, your work is highly effective. The Lady Captain calmly dispatched the fleet to strategic point B. On the command throne, Ning Lu nodded with satisfaction. Diana's overall performance was good, though there was a minor oversight. It was within controllable limits, and she discovered and responded to it promptly before he even had to remind her. Under the Lady Captain's command, the 11th Legion took control of 5 portal areas, then launched an assault on Necromunda's orbital defense facilities. The remaining round Spider Alliance fleet attempted to resist, but when the King Power Shadow transferred defensive Node E to an escort fleet and arrived at the battlefield, the battle quickly concluded. The Gene Seed Primarch received a report from the Sound Array Master. Progress in the other 5 star systems was smooth, and the portals were all controlled by the 11th Legion. The star system handled by the 2nd Battle Group was an agricultural system of the Round Spider Alliance, and they faced the greatest challenge in space combat, along with the 7th Battle Group. Over nearly 10 millennia of development, the Spider Star's surface ecosystem had been severely damaged, far worse than Vostronia. The towers where the Steel Lords resided were surrounded by ash wastes, and their population was orders of magnitude greater than Vostronia, making them even more reliant on external food sources. The agricultural systems and the systems producing data crystals were the two most important systems to the techno-nobility. One system sustained the entire alliance's food supply, while the other was the foundation of the entire techno-nobility's cyber-tech system. Because of this, the techno-nobility stationed a large number of warships in these two systems. The second battle group, which encountered resistance, was the last of the 5 battle groups to conclude its space combat. The agricultural system had 4 habitable planets, including 2 grassland planets, 1 ocean planet, and 1 mountain planet. After the second battle group annihilated the enemy ships, Lord Morrison examined the Augur Matrix's scan results for the 4 worlds awaiting conquest. He keenly noted that these 4 worlds, like other planets classified as agricultural worlds in the human empire, had small populations, all in the millions. Morrison immediately realized that the management methods on these worlds should also be similar to the human empire's agricultural worlds. Serfs were scattered across the planet, they didn't care who their masters were, only needing to complete their labor and submit the required quota. Conquering such worlds could be achieved by striking swiftly at the rulers. Morrison issued orders in the battle group's command channel. Our next attack must be precise and efficient, as demanded by the Gene Seed Primarch. Our targets are the high towers on each world. Influenced by the dominant techno-nobility in the Round Spider Alliance, many ruling families on the 4 agricultural worlds had also established high towers. Of course, the population and scale of these towers were far smaller than the towering spires on the Spider Star. Black drop pods were scattered across the 4 worlds. The dazzling light generated by atmospheric friction illuminated each world. The Order shadows, clad in black armor, advanced in neat formations, assaulting the towering spires. The defenders used laser weapons manufactured on the Spider Star to attack the black-armored warriors. Scorching beams struck the Mark II power armor, only leaving mottled marks and causing no harm to the Order shadows. Rogue squads were the spearhead of the assault. They moved in perfect unison, raising their bolt guns, and a single volley shattered the enemy's formation. Chainswords roared to life, leaving only scattered limbs in their wake. After ground combat began, in just 22 hours, 4,500 warriors of the second battle group completed the occupation of 163 high towers across the 4 worlds. Among the 5 battle groups, the second battle group, which was the last to begin ground assault, was paradoxically the first to capture its target system, and their losses were also the smallest, with only 13 unlucky individuals tragically killed by bombs detonated by desperate rulers. At the same moment, after capturing Necromunda's orbit, Ning Lu also issued the attack command. The Gene Seed Primarch entered his specially designed black drop pod, which was much larger than those used by the legionaries. He could even stand upright inside it. The black drop pod plunged towards the highest tower on Necromunda. Ning Lu's target was the Chief Iron Lord. Chapter 146 Techno-Nobility. The Wangquan shadow locked onto its target, Necromunda's first tower, and high-speed drop pods screamed as they plunged into the planetary atmosphere. The thrusters on more than a dozen drop pods accelerated further, and in a blinding flash, their speed rapidly increased to 12,000 km per hour. In mere seconds, the drop pod's machine spirits, guided by the Wangquan shadow in orbit, reached their target and slammed into the tower's protective shield. Amidst a thunderous roar, a dazzling light shot skyward, and the defense system collapsed instantly. The drop pods crashed heavily onto the tower, and despite activating their reverse thrusters at the last moment, large sections of the building were still leveled by the shockwave. The violent tremor continued to spread, causing the tower, which was much taller than Vostronia's exemplar city, to shake. Screams erupted from large buildings on the edges, which then tumbled and fell. Necromunda's towers were fundamentally no different from the hive cities of other hive world and industrial world. In Ning Lu's memory, the largest hive world of the future empire had taller, larger towers and housed a greater population. Due to their architectural structure, whenever major battles or disasters like earthquakes occurred, those living in the upper edge areas were often affected. Excavating fallen debris had always been a key project for smaller families and the best opportunity for ordinary people to ascend. Just as those living in the lower levels frantically rushed out of the tower, risking their lives to pursue a chance to change their fate and charging towards the fallen architectural debris, the same scene unfolded at the other 7 towers. The 4th battle group's first wave of attacks began in full. The 8 towers scattered across Necromunda were like 8 most prominent spider legs, much taller than the surrounding towers that guarded them. They were the key strategic targets locked onto by the Order shadows. Ning Lu and the Honor Guard members also emerged from the drop pod. The Gene Seed Primarch surveyed his surroundings and immediately locked onto his target, the highest building on the tower. Send our location information to the flagship. Move out. The Honor Guard members followed behind Ning Lu. They had all passed the trials and become extraordinary individuals of sequence 9 through different paths. After advancing for nearly a kilometer, the techno-nobility led their forces, attacking the Order shadows from all directions. Ning Lu scanned them and immediately noticed that every enemy had undergone more or less extensive bionic modifications. Those wearing ornate power armor, who presumably belonged to the techno-nobility class, had almost no flesh left on their bodies. Combat immediately erupted. The most common spider leg mechanical modifications among the spider soldiers involved them raising their 4 or 6 segmented limbs, attacking with their weapons in a bizarre posture. Shining arcs of electricity struck the black armor. Several Order shadows, seeing the runes reflected on their helmet displays, immediately warned their battle brothers over the communication channel. Their weapons can damage power armor. The Honor Guard immediately responded with targeted countermeasures. The warriors and hunters charged. The warriors crashed into the most densely packed enemy areas. The disintegrating force fields of their power swords shimmered, chainswords roared, and dozens of spider soldiers were slain instantly. The hunters interspersed among them, launching precise strikes. They executed accurate hunts, further disrupting the enemy's battle formation. In the chaotic battle, the enemy identification systems of the spider soldiers in the rear ranks were in disarray, and hastily fired arcs of electricity shot forward indiscriminately, hitting friend and foe alike. Amidst the chaos, the Order shadows upheld the Gene Father's philosophy. They calmly raised their bolt guns, relying on their superhuman senses and keen intuition to lock onto their opponents and unleash precise volleys. On the battlefield, only the techno-nobility posed a significant threat to the Order shadows. A boltgun round blew off one of a techno-nobility's alloy spider legs, but he immediately used his remaining 3 mechanical legs to spring up, like a spider attacking a face, swinging his bionic limbs at the power armor. The blade roared, slicing through ceramide armor. Just as the Order shadow was about to be shredded, a golden light burst forth. The techno-nobility was shattered by a single punch, his broken mechanical bionics scattering and falling. Ning Lu's steps did not falter. He instantly appeared before another techno-nobility, swinging his sword and shredding half of the metal-covered head with a blue disintegrating force field. Every second, a techno-nobility died by the Gene Seed Primarch's hand. Ning Lu led the Honor Guard towards their target, but the increasing number of surging enemies slowed their pace, making their advance progressively slower. Furthermore, strange circular flying vehicles filled the sky, rapidly approaching. At this moment, the Legion's fighter jets also tore through the sky and arrived in time. The streamlined aircraft and the circular flying vehicles erupted into a fierce space battle. 4 Order shadows piloted gunships, diving down from the sky. Multi-barreled laser cannons rotated and roared, beams falling into the enemy ranks, and swaths of spider soldiers collapsed. The Order shadows suddenly accelerated. In rapid offense and defense, they were more adaptable. They remained calm and efficient, striking the enemy with precision. The spider soldiers were pushed back by the combined air and ground assault. The Order shadows were getting closer and closer to their target. The ground rumbled and trembled as a metal monster the size of a night mech stomped forward, killing its way through. Its lower body consisted of 8 metal spider legs, and its torso had no flesh, resembling a giant alloy metal pillar. Two pairs of folding metal spider-like arms extended from its arms, shoulders, chest, and back, each holding different weapons. Its two mechanical spider legs behind it lifted, and a series of circular data crystals lit up sequentially, as energy rapidly gathered at the ends of the spider legs. Blinding beams of light shot towards the battlefield, mercilessly tearing apart the spider warriors in their path. Two Order shadows, unable to dodge in time, had their ceramite armor pierced by the beams. Ning Lu sensed the fall of his two sons and instantly confirmed the opponent's identity, the Chief Iron Lord. The Gene Seed Primarch strode towards the Chief Iron Lord. Anyone in his path, whether spider warriors or techno-nobility, was crushed as if by a high-speed train. As he ran, Ning Lu raised his left arm and fired his bolt gun. Boom, boom, boom. The Gene Seed Primarch's black eyes narrowed. His gaze penetrated the smoke of the explosion, seeing the Chief Iron Lord raise the two arms on his chest. His alloy arms glowed, and round shields hung from his metal spider legs. His metal arms swung rapidly, blocking the bolt gun fire, and surprisingly, the metal arms were undamaged by the explosions. Open black lens bracket. It's the effect of that energy field. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, he appeared before the Chief Iron Lord and thrust his sword directly at the enemy. The Chief Iron Lord's shoulder arms suddenly sprang out, like two rapidly firing switchblades. The disintegrating force field collided with the strange energy field, which glowed red, emitting a harsh grinding sound. The Chief Iron Lord's red bionic eyes blinked. His two spider legs on his shoulders suddenly sprang up, like two long spears, stabbing towards Ning Lu's head. Chapter 147, Killing the Chief Iron Lord. Facing the sudden attack from above, Ning Lu raised his arm to meet it, and the golden energy field collided with the metal spider leg enveloped in red light. Boom! The power fist gained the upper hand in the energy collision, and the Chief Iron Lord's massive body was sent flying by the impact. Here's a bolt for you. The two spider legs on the Chief Iron Lord's chest immediately popped out, blocking in front of him. Just as he thought this time would be like before, blocking the black armored giant's attack, the bolt, acting as a bribe weakened, detonated. The Chief Iron Lord's data crystal's logic link experienced a momentary stagnation. He didn't understand why the two attacks, whose sensor scan results were identical, and whose energy properties and readings were completely the same, had entirely different lethality. Ning Lu seized the opportunity, channeling his spirituality into the power fist, and swung his arm, throwing a punch. Open black lens bracket, exile, close black lens bracket. He didn't feel the dragging force like when he released death. What the power fist blasted out was a surging power that sent the metal body flying into the air. Ning Lu had experimented in the training cage during his free time, confirming that by channeling spirituality, the power fist would release extraordinary abilities from the Justiciar pathway, but he couldn't actively choose which one, at least not yet. The power of the extraordinary ability was related to the spirituality he channeled. During his leisure, Ning Lu would place the power fist into the third space of the Nation of Disorder to establish a connection, but because he sometimes needed to wear it, a complete connection had not yet been established. While the Gene Seed Primarch was contemplating, he caught sight of the Chief Iron Lord's figure, flung into the air and tumbling downwards. His mind naturally outlined the trajectory of the metal body's flight. This transcended calculations of flight trajectory and gravity, it was a nearly intuitive perception. Ning Lu's figure flickered, rushing towards where the Chief Iron Lord was falling. He took 3 steps to build momentum, leapt into the air, and, following the 4th rule of Osbervaya, thrust his sword upwards. The power sword, shimmering with dazzling blue light, pierced into the metal body, whose defenses were weakened by the bribe. The decomposition field crackled, crushing the Chief Iron Lord's nearly completely metallized head. Rumble. The enormous metal wreckage crashed to the ground, landing on the Steel Lord's honor guard who had rushed over, instantly crushing several techno-nobility to death. The death of the Chief Iron Lord dealt a significant blow to the morale of the techno-nobility and the Spider Warriors. In their logic links, the Steel Lords were the most powerful beings, no one could defeat them. But the chief Iron Lord had died at the hands of the black armored giant. The pilots in the aircraft saw black lightning, flashing rapidly, and one techno-nobility after another was struck down. Everything they witnessed made them doubt if they were in a nightmare. The techno-nobility on the ground felt as if they were facing death directly. Their resistance lasted only a moment before completely collapsing. The first techno-nobility knelt down and surrendered, triggering a chain reaction. The spider soldiers also threw down their weapons and surrendered to the black armor warriors. 2 apothecaries in the honor guard, after confirming that 5 honor guard members had suffered fatal, unrecoverable injuries in the battle, informed the tech sergeant to inter them in dreadnoughts. The oldest dreadnoughts can be traced back to the Age of Strife. Powerful warriors, in situations where they could not recover, were not mercifully killed, but were given the honor of continuing to fight. Old prototype dreadnoughts from the Unification Wars could be piloted by non-Astartes warriors, but later, only Space Marines and Custodians could be interred within them. Each dreadnought houses a living being, permanently connected to the machine through a form of thought-driven unit. Once interred in a dreadnought, a Space Marine cannot leave their metal tomb, destined to endure endless combat until destroyed. Considering that the Order Shadows chosen to become extraordinary beings were all excellent warriors, Ning Lu decided to inter them in dreadnoughts after their deaths, allowing them to continue serving the Legion. Their extraordinary characteristics would not disappear because of this. It would not be too late to retrieve them when they were completely dead. After occupying Necromunda's first spire, the Gene Seed Primarch ordered the honor guard to rest, while he himself found the chief Iron Lord's treasury. Ning Lu glanced at the alloy door, saw the flashing data crystal, and, confirming he couldn't crack it, decided to unlock it by force. Golden light shone, and he punched the door. The heavy alloy door was shattered by the decomposition field. Ning Lu stepped inside, entering the treasury of the most powerful person in the Round Spider Alliance. After a tour, he found a total of 24 dazzling potion materials. 15 of them were cybernetic eyes, the main material for the Perfector Pathway Sequence 7 inches appraiser. Open black lens bracket. I didn't expect to collect the potion materials for appraiser so quickly. Rozicki just advanced to sequence, archaeologist, and other tech sergeants are still savant, close black lens bracket. Ning Lu also found 9 modular octagonal gears. Each face of the gear had 8 teeth, interlocking and rotating according to a specific pattern. The rotation pattern of each face was completely different. Open black lens bracket. Not a potion material I know of, but it shouldn't be a high sequence potion material either. Gears, the Perfector Pathway Sequence 6 inches Mechanic Expert, also known as Gear Master, Mechanical Artificer, Artisan. These gears are very likely the potion materials for Mechanic Expert, close black lens bracket. Just as Ning Lu was sending the potion materials back to the Nation of Disorder, at the 7th Spire, the 4th Battle Group's 5th Company, after fighting their way through, encountered the 7th Iron Lord. The Battle Group commander, leading his personal guard and auxiliary army, was responsible for attacking the 2nd Spire, while the 1st to 6th Companies were responsible for attacking the 3rd to 8th Spires respectively. The company commander of the 4th Battle Group's 5th Company, leading his guard, engaged in a decisive battle with the 7th Iron Lord and his techno-nobility guards. The cunning 7th Iron Lord, seeing his subordinates continuously falling around him, decided to use the merman artifact he had found while excavating an underground ruin. He hadn't intended to use it before. This was a trump card he had prepared for a final assault against the Chief Iron Lord. But the strength of the Black Armor warriors exceeded his logic link's estimation. If he didn't use his trump card, he wouldn't survive today. A pair of cockroach-like metal tentacles deep within the 7th Iron Lord's chest tapped against his abdomen. A metal plate opened, and the cockroach tentacles pulled out a metal sphere, which they forcefully threw towards the 5th Company commander, who was holding a power axe. The metal sphere struck the 5th Company commander's feet, and silver liquid rapidly spread, churning. The company commander and 3 adjutants were about to dodge, but found their feet tightly bound to the ground. At the same time, the seventh Iron Lord appeared before him, his mantis blade spinning in a sharp horizontal slash. The company commander realized he couldn't dodge. Before his death, he threw the power axe in his hand with all his might. The spinning power axe deeply cleaved into the seventh Iron Lord's exposed abdomen. With a muffled thud, the bodies of the company commander, the adjutants, and the seventh Iron Lord simultaneously fell to the ground. Having lost their company commander and 3 adjutants, the squad leaders quickly discussed the outcome through the command channel. Kyan, the company commander, previously relayed the Gene Seed Primarch's order issued at the War Council. You once served as the Gene Father's honor guard and are a member of his royal court, so you should temporarily assume command. All right. Kyan took over command, directing the mop-up of the techno-nobility. After the death of the 8 Steel Lords, the Round Spider Alliance collapsed completely. Although there were still resistance forces, they could no longer stop the 11th Legion's conquest. The Order Shadows controlled 6 star systems and inter-system teleportation gates. Ning Lu immediately dispatched teams to scout the lower levels of the spires, searching for the giant spiders and other special creatures from local legends. Although the spires were not previously called hive cities according to imperial cultural customs, each spire was in fact a hive city. The Gene Seed Primarch believed that the strange and varied hive city creatures of Necromunda already existed. At the same time, in the Salto system, the Faceless Ones launched a swift offensive, recapturing the node marked B25 from the orcs. Chapter 148. Orcs are so delicious. Erlang, the second company commander of the Faceless Ones, stepped forward to Joffrey, who was clad in black armor, and began to converse as planned. Joffrey, I learned from the supply ship captain that Lord Ning Lu was warmly welcomed on Terra. The aide-de-camp of the 10th Battle Group was accustomed to the Faceless Ones' post-battle conversations. They were relatively quiet before and during battle, and their commands in the communication channel were concise. It was only after battle that they became more talkative. They enjoyed chatting with the Order Shadows at this time. Yes, Lord Ning Lu received the same cheers on Terra as Lord Horus. Joffrey straightened his chest, a smile on his face, and spoke proudly. While the Faceless Ones and Order Shadows were conversing happily, Suarez, the first company captain, squatted beside the corpse of the war boss he had slain and used his chainsword to cut off a thick arm. He looked back, then lowered his head as if inspecting the enemy's corpse, before opening his mouth to reveal a mouthful of sharp teeth, a distinctive feature of the Faceless Ones, and bit into the war boss's arm. The moment Suarez bit down, his pupils slightly dilated, and his eyebrows twitched. It was so delicious. His tongue touched the savory taste of ham, while his teeth sank into the crisp tenderness of mushrooms. The meat fibers unfolded layer by layer like silk melting in a spring breeze, and suddenly, emerald-like veins bloomed within the muscle, sweet juice breaking through the crispy outer shell, like dewdrops rolling over morning pine needles. A soft sigh escaped his throat, suspended in the air, as if cut short by a sudden, refreshing sweetness. At the same time, the other Faceless Ones also showed expressions of enjoyment. Before their first taste of the war boss's arm, they had been worried that the dirty, thick arm, mixed with a strange, foul-smelling blood, would be unpalatable. But they now found that the stronger the Xenos, the more delicious they were. This was the talent of the Faceless Ones. Suarez opened his mouth wide and quickly swallowed one of the war boss's arms, smacking his lips in satisfaction. The first company captain of the Faceless Ones swallowed both of the war boss's arms, as if he had eaten strips of ham wrapped in tender mushrooms. He felt his body, weary from the fierce battle, now filled with strength. Suarez vigorously waved his arm, carefully distinguishing. Open black lens bracket him, my strength hasn't increased yet. I haven't eaten enough. Close black lens bracket. After several attempts at eating, the Faceless Ones had summarized a pattern. The enhancements they usually gained from eating required a sufficient amount. Moreover, the stronger the Faceless One was before eating, the more they needed to eat for enhancement. He hadn't eaten enough yet, but he was full and couldn't eat any more. Suarez reluctantly glanced at the fresh meat on the ground and walked towards Joffrey, who was conversing. He asked, following the topic he had prepared. Your two battle groups are also patrolling in this direction. By the command of the Gene Father, they are searching for a lost colony. Joffrey frowned slightly, his black eyes imperceptibly sweeping over Suarez's abdomen. The Order shadow keenly sensed a slight bulge there, and he had a familiar feeling. After the battle, one company captain came to talk to him, and after a while, another one did. The latter company captain always seemed to be full when he appeared. Open black lens bracket, faceless ones, special nutrient packs, close black lens bracket. Joffrey secretly speculated, and at the same time, he noticed that, as before, the company captain who had spoken to him first would quietly leave. As the Order shadow pondered, the first company captain of the Faceless Ones spoke, asking, "What were the results? Do the Faceless Ones need to do anything?" Suarez asked. These days under Ning Lu's command were more comfortable than the previous cautious hiding under Horus. The warriors of the Second Legion hoped this situation would continue. The third battle group discovered Sepra Mundi, another significant discovery after their discovery of the Daxos twin star system. The Dark Lord seems very adept at exploration. A smile appeared on Joffrey's face. He heard that it was a planet with great development potential, not only possessing the same industrial foundation as Vostronia but also being a convergence point for numerous warp routes, with several stable Mandeville points nearby. "That's truly good news," the Faceless One said with a smile, then added, "Our tech sergeant captured some round, rolling monsters with sharp teeth. They seem to be creatures bred by those war bosses. Perhaps the Primarch will like these creatures." Oh. Joffrey's attention was completely captured by Suarez's words, making him forget the slight strangeness he had felt just now. He followed the first company captain of the Faceless Ones to a cage. The Order shadow keenly sensed that the cage was enveloped in an energy field. Joffrey's black eyes looked into the cage, where more than a dozen red spherical monsters rolled, shrieked, and chased each other. Their bodies were covered in sharp teeth similar to those in their mouths. Their faces were hideous, and their eyes were wide. After observing for a while, Joffrey spoke. Lord Ning Lu might indeed be interested in these little red monsters. The Order shadow, recalling the data sent to friendly forces by various expedition fleets after encountering the Greenskin war bosses, reminded him. "Suarez, I heard that the war bosses encountered by the expedition fleets have strange reproductive capabilities. Will there be any accidents during transport?" "Joffrey, don't worry. When they were discovered, they were kept in separate enclosures. I think they are different from those war bosses." The Faceless One curled his lip, speaking with disdain. "Besides, they look like they could be crushed with one hand. Even if they proliferate, they're no threat." After gazing at the cage for a moment, the Order shadow cautiously offered a suggestion. "Prepare a dedicated transport ship to carry them. If an accident occurs, it will be easier to handle." "All right." Suarez enjoyed fighting alongside the Order shadow and agreed to his cautious suggestion without any aversion. Cage after cage of squigs, restrained by the tech sergeants, were sent onto the transport ship, which then returned to Vostronia. At the same time, Ning Lu, having completed the conquest of the Round Spider Alliance, presented medals to the warriors who had distinguished themselves in this conquest. The Gene Seed Primarch personally pinned the medal on Kion's chest, encouragingly patting the shoulder of Kion, who had just been formally promoted to 5th Company Captain of the 4th Battle Group. The medals were designed by the Legion's tech sergeants according to Ning Lu's instructions and supervised by the serfs and servitors on the Wangquan Shadow's foundry deck. Therefore, the back of the medal was stamped with the High Gothic abbreviation, SCFD, and above it was stamped, Roranius, corresponding to the round spider. The medal was a black circle overall, with a red 8-legged spider in the central ring on the front, symbolizing the conquest of the Round Spider Alliance. Everyone who participated in this operation and contributed, whether Astartes, auxiliary army soldiers, ship commanders, artillery supervisors, etc., received a medal. However, only those who performed exceptionally were personally awarded by the Gene Seed Primarch. This included the commanders and company captains of various battle groups, as well as outstanding captains and legion warriors. Of course, there were also human commanders like Diana Bolin. Those not personally awarded by the Primarch received grey badges, which were awarded by their direct superiors. After the award ceremony, the 7th Battle Group and the 12th Battle Group set sail under Ning Lu's command, heading to Tanis in the Pacific Star region according to the star map submitted by the Terava people. Their responsibility was to annihilate the Xenos entrenched there and control Tanis. Ning Lu then led the Sleepless and Hunters from the Honor Guard to the bottom nest for hunting. Chapter 149, Hunting the Legendary Giant Spirit Spider. On the colossal planet recently renamed Necromunda from Spider Star, the towering structures naturally transformed into hive cities. At the bottom of the first hive city, the black armored warriors entered the pipelines, observed by the curious and fearful gazes of the residents trapped there. Ning Lu's body was slightly bent as he moved through the damp and foul pipes. After several hundred steps, he first saw a corpse slumped on the ground, clutching its leg, its foot a bloody mess. Moments later, as expected, he spotted a thorn crystal in the corner of a sewage pit. The Gene Seed Primarch flashed, casually picking up the lawyer's auxiliary material from the sewage pit and placing it into his massive backpack. Seeing the Gene Seed Primarch's interest in the coral-like crystals, the Sleepless bowed to pick them up. Darkness and filth were no hindrance to them. After another few dozen steps, Ning Lu suddenly drew the power sword from his waist and swung it casually. The blue disintegrating field enveloping the blade struck a tendril-like creature that had burst from the sewage pit, shredding the 2-meter-wide, slimy, bloated organism. Open black lens bracket slime jelly. Close black lens bracket. It seemed no creatures could survive deep within the muddy oceans and toxic sewage pits of the hive city's lower nest and bottom nest, yet slime jelly thrived in such harsh environments. The tendrils of the slime jelly could sense their surroundings. When foolish creatures struggling to survive approached, they would suddenly shoot out, envelop the unfortunate victim, paralyze them with toxins secreted from their tendrils, and then drag the victim into their filthy, viscous body to slowly digest them. Open black lens bracket not a potion ingredient. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu then swung his sword, casually slaying another massive slime jelly that had lived for who knows how many centuries. The lower levels of the hive city were a dangerous place for any experienced survivor, who would carefully avoid sewage pits, dark corners, and other hazardous areas. But for the Order Shadows, with their keen senses, it was no threat. They continued without stopping, killing the dangerous creatures one by one. For a period in the future, until dangerous creatures from other areas migrated into this region, the struggling residents here would find it had become safer. Open black lens bracket. According to the investigation, a giant spirit spider once appeared in an abandoned dome, dragging away some unfortunate scavengers. Close black lens bracket. As the Gene Seed Primarch pondered, he exited the winding pipes and entered an abandoned dome. No sooner had he stepped into the dome than hundreds of monsters spread their wings and lunged at the black armored warriors. Open black lens bracket. Ripperjacks. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu glanced at them and recognized these predators as creatures hybridized from giant bats and piranhas. Ripperjacks hung upside down from the massive abandoned dome, and when hunting, they would snatch their prey with their hooked claws and wrap them in their wings. Afterward, the Ripperjacks would gouge out the victim's eyes, then tear at their face and throat. Open black lens bracket. One of the main ingredients for the Hunter's subsequent sequence 8 feet provoker, potion. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, he decided to preserve the Ripperjack corpses intact. The Gene Seed Primarch took a deep breath, light and shadow flickering in his eyes, and suddenly let out a psychic howl. The shockwave of warp energy, under his control, did not affect his descendants behind him, but completely enveloped the Ripperjacks. The psychic scream instantly shattered the minds of hundreds of Ripperjacks, causing them to fall lifelessly to the ground. You all go in all directions and search for traces of the giant spirit spider. The Order Shadows obeyed and departed. Ning Lu took this time to quickly transport the Ripperjacks back to the Nation of Disorder. Open black lens bracket. With the Ripperjacks, the provoker potion only lacks squigs. Orcs like to keep squigs, especially the snakebite clan. There are many types of squigs too. Besides the common hoppers, there are edible ones and mountable ones. Even those common hoppers might turn into squiggoths, they are also part of the greenskin ecosystem. I reckon there's any possibility with orky ingenuity. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, he moved all the ripperjack corpses into a palace. Upon returning to reality, he received a report from a hunter. "Father, I found traces of a giant spider's passage." Upon hearing this, the Gene Seed Primarch immediately gathered the other Order shadows and rushed to the hunter's location. Upon arriving, he indeed saw many sticky silk threads hanging around, and deep V-shaped footprints on the ground and domed stone walls. "Track the traces." Ning Lu gave the command to the hunters, and the Order shadows immediately fanned out, some bending down to examine the ground, others inspecting the walls. Moments later, they gathered to discuss the traces, and after reaching a consensus, they led the way forward. Even to the natives of Spider Star, the giant spirit spider was merely a legend passed down for 10,000 years. It was both a belief and a synonym for fear and nightmare. Everyone who encountered a giant spirit spider met only one outcome: death. This was why they became legendary creatures. Of course, the lower nest, where lives were as cheap as grass, never lacked adventurers. Lured by the giant spirit spider's precious meat and venom, they foolishly hoped to hunt one, exchange it for immense wealth, and ascend to the top of the tower. Only death awaited them. Giant spirit spiders possessed an extremely strong territorial sense. Everyone who trespassed into their territory would be dragged away and hung on their webs to be eaten. The Order Shadow's hunting party moved forward. The spiderwebs became increasingly dense. They had entered the giant spirit spider's territory. As Ning Lu advanced, he looked ahead. In his subspace insight, he saw two creatures emitting light of fear and death on the lake-like surface of the water ahead. Their projections in the warp were clearly visible. Open black lens bracket raft spiders. Today is a lucky day. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu knew that raft spiders were the most precious of all giant spirit spider species. Their eyes, as pure and valuable as diamonds, lured every greedy hunter. The Gene Seed Primarch reached out and snatched a chainsword from the hand of a hunter beside him. In his hand, it was merely a short knife. He flashed repeatedly, quickly arriving at the sewage pond. Two raft spiders, nearly 100 meters tall, glided gracefully on the surface of the sewage pond. For their bodies, which were as tall as Emperor-class titans but even more massive, their gliding on the sewage surface seemed unusually incongruous. But Ning Lu knew this was a characteristic of raft spiders, and why they were named so. As the Gene Seed Primarch looked at the raft spiders, they simultaneously looked back at him. They instinctively sensed the terrifying aura emanating from the small black creature before them. They arched their bodies, their abdominal silk glands twitching, and spider silk whipped out like white whips. Ning Lu's black eyes narrowed. He noticed that several spots on the giant spirit spiders' bodies were radiating spiritual light. Open black lens bracket goodness, their whole bodies are potion ingredients. Eyes, venom fangs, silk glands, even the spider legs, close black lens bracket. To preserve the integrity of the potion ingredients, he did not use power weapons or bolt guns. The Gene Seed Primarch suddenly broke into a sprint, dashing across the sewage pond. The giant spirit spider violently shook its head, its silk lashing at his black figure. The white whip was as fast as lightning, but the Gene Seed Primarch was faster. Each of his steps landed precisely on the protruding rocks in the sewage pond, using them to propel himself forward. At the same time, his consciousness also spread towards the giant spirit spiders. Boom! The Gene Seed Primarch's consciousness crashed against two blood-red spiderweb gates, causing the webs to vibrate violently. His black eyes narrowed. The raft spiders' minds were surprisingly resilient. Considering they hadn't specifically trained their will, this was truly beyond his expectations. The Gene Seed Primarch's light and shadow eyes shifted, focusing his consciousness on one raft spider. The gathered psychic energy transformed into thousands of black psychic torches, smashing against the spiderweb gate. At the same time, his movements did not stop as he charged towards the other raft spider. Taking 3 large strides, Ning Lu leapt into the air, avoiding the slashing venom fangs. Through subspace insight, he detected a small gap in the raft spider's hard exoskeleton, at the connection point of its abdomen. The gene seed Primarch's body spun rapidly in the air, dodging the falling spider legs. Leaping to the center of the abdomen, Ning Lu forcefully thrust the chainsword into the raft spider's abdomen before pressing the runic symbol on the hilt. The gene seed Primarch's immense strength continuously drove the chainsword forward, shredding the raft spider's insides with its roaring, rotating blade. The chainsword's path avoided each silk gland, a result of Ning Lu's skillful control. When the Order's shadows arrived at the sewage pond, they saw the chainsword emerge from the back of a creature even larger than a titan's body. At the same time, the other massive creature, killed by the psychic attack, also crashed heavily into the sewage lake. Amidst the splashing sewage, Ning Lu caught the falling chainsword, landed on the raft spider's hard carapace, deactivated the runic symbol, and casually tossed it in front of an Order shadow. You all search the vicinity. The Order's shadows recovered from the shocking scene and fanned out to search. Ning Lu dragged the massive raft spiders into the Nation of Disorder, thinking to himself. Open black lens bracket. Other materials aren't certain, but the giant spirit spider's silk glands should be the main material for the Witch Pathway Sequence 6 feet Joyful Witch. After all, from this sequence onward, witches can create spider silk. But it's somewhat awkward that I haven't even gathered all the potion ingredients for sequence 8 feet Instigator, yet. I have the other potion ingredients, but not the catachan brain leaves. Close black lens bracket. In Ning Lu's memory, the lower nest of future Necromunda would be covered in catachan brain leaves, but Necromunda had just been conquered, and catachan had not yet been discovered by the expedition fleet, so brain leaves naturally wouldn't have been brought here. Open black lens bracket. I can only wait for the divination dice to recharge, then use the established connection to specifically divine the star map leading to Catachan. If successful, I can dispatch a fleet to occupy that planet. Catachan is very suitable as a recruitment world for the 7th Battle Group, which is primarily composed of hunters. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's eyes lit up, he suddenly had an idea. Open black lens bracket. Divining those special worlds he knew of, arranging suitable recruitment worlds for each battle group, allowing them to recruit soldiers whose culture suited the battle group's unique characteristics from those worlds. Vostronia would primarily serve as the main recruitment ground for the 11th Battle Group, which is primarily composed of lawyers. Close black lens bracket. The key to this, of course, was the divination dice. Therefore, after bringing both raft spider corpses to the Nation of Disorder, the Gene Seed Primarch went directly to the 3rd layer of real space to check on the divination dice's status. Chapter 150, The Apothecary. In the 3rd real space of the Nation of Disorder, Ning Lu stared at the 3-sided divination dice before him. His dark eyes deepened, and after a moment, strands of black thread reflected in his pupils, connecting him to the divination dice. Open black lens bracket. Initial connection established. Close black lens bracket. As Ning Lu pondered, he removed the power fist from his left hand and placed it there, continuing to establish the connection. The Gene Seed Primarch then returned to the raft spider and cut off a piece of its armored limb. This limb had no spiritual residue and was not a potion ingredient. He took out the Chief Forgemaster's specially made small storage device from his backpack, activated the stasis field, and placed the tissue inside. Upon returning to the real world, Ning Lu received a report from his guards that no other giant spirit spiders were found around the sewage pond. The Gene Seed Primarch immediately sent messages to Adams and Rozicki Czech, making arrangements before their return journey. 1 stellar hour later, he met the 2 Order shadows in the tower that had recently belonged to the Chief Iron Lord. The 4th Battle Group will temporarily be responsible for guarding the 6 star systems of the Round Spider Alliance, Death Lord, and I hope you can establish a new order here. An order similar to Vostronia's, but adapted to the local conditions. Ning Lu recalled the powerful regime that the Hemar family would establish to rule Necromunda for a long time in the future and continued. Although Necromunda's population is 100 times that of Vostronia, as long as you place yourself in the position of arbitrator and support the rise of a family, you can establish an order. Father, I will complete your command. Adams, as always, accepted Ning Lu's command with a stern expression. Your other duty is to excavate ruins and master the newly acquired power. In this regard, you must cooperate closely with the chief forgemaster. The Gene Seed Primarch saw the two order shadows nod simultaneously, then picked up the storage device from his feet. Rozicki, in addition to studying the teleportation gate and the technology left by the Round Spider Alliance, I also want you to research the biological tissue inside. The chief forgemaster took the arm-sized box with both hands and asked curiously. Lord, where did it come from? The most precious raft spider among the giant spirit spiders. I want you to research a method to kill giant spirit spiders without damaging their silk glands, venom fangs, eyes, and spider legs. Ning Lu could not be sure whether the eyes of giant spirit spiders other than the raft spider were potion ingredients, so he included them directly. Adams, once you discover giant spirit spiders, organize a hunt. After arranging matters in Necromunda, the Gene Seed Primarch ordered the 2nd, 5th, and 11th battle groups to set off, with Vigilance Star as their target. Arbitrator Lord Howard Fend had tortured the location of Vigilance Star from a shaman, and Ning Lu, considering that the Sam Khan Arc was famous among the Eldar for its combat prowess, decided to go and support the Arbitrator Lord. As the fleet returned, on the main planet of the Tricon system. In this maiden world transformed by the Eldar, even the rugged mountains appeared soft and beautiful. Apothecary Mikkel established his laboratory on the summit of the most lush, pristine mountain. Every day, before the sun rose, he would take a walk around the mountain. Today was no different. The chief apothecary, clad in a black robe, strode along the mountain path. The Order Shadow's gaze swept around, occasionally stopping to examine the herbs in his line of sight. The most important reason the apothecary chose this mountain was that he discovered numerous primitive herbs here: grayish-green oval-leafed sage, limonal-scented pale yellow resin-exuding balm, and evening primrose that split into 4 lobes when ripe. Mikkel would occasionally stop, operating the prosthetic arm on his back to pluck herbs, with surgical forceps temporarily replaced by specially designed picking tools. 1 stellar hour later, his backpack was full of herbs, and the chief apothecary immediately returned to the laboratory. The apothecary placed fresh balm and other herbs on a drying rack to bake at a low temperature, removing other parts and retaining only the essential oil components. He then mobilized his psychic vision, used material adaptation, and began to domesticate the plants. He placed the sage leaves at the bottom of a mortar, held the pestle vertically, and began with gentle circular presses, gradually increasing pressure upon hearing a rustling sound. Once all the sage was crushed, the apothecary began fine grinding. He slowly rotated the pestle clockwise, keeping his wrist at a steady arc, using the texture of the mortar's inner wall to crush the fibers. When the leaves turned into coarse particles, he reversed his wrist, making small, rapid counterclockwise circles to make the powder even and fine. Oils from the leaves seeped out as the temperature rose, condensing into tiny oil droplets on the mortar wall. During the apothecary's material adaptation, psychic vision would be fully mobilized to domesticate plants and lifeless animal materials, making the materials processed by extraordinary abilities more potent than ordinary ones. The apothecary then processed other materials such as deer antlers, and after preparing all the ingredients, he began to make the potion. He weighed all the liquid solvents, poured them into a 2-meter diameter cauldron, and activated the ignition rune. After the liquid boiled, he poured in materials like evening primrose, and finally, dripped in the essential oil of balm. The apothecary picked up a sterilized glass stirring rod and began to stir rapidly. 15 minutes later, he stopped and deactivated the rune. The liquid in the pot gradually cooled, and the air was filled with a rich, sweet herbal scent. Mikkel picked up potion bottles from the side and poured the brownish liquid into them, bottle by bottle. The filled potions were neatly placed on a stainless steel reagent rack. As the chief apothecary wiped the sweat from his forehead, he felt something dissolving within him. He picked up a control staff from the shelf, pushed a silver trolley filled with reagent racks, and walked to a large marble door. Mikkel raised the control staff and pressed the activation rune on its head. Green runes flickered, and with the sound of hinges, the marble door slowly opened. The chief apothecary pushed the silver trolley through the door, then turned and used the control staff to close the door. Then, Mikkel descended the spiral downward passage. The chief apothecary pushed the silver trolley, arrived at the mountain's core, and reached the lounge where candidates gathered and waited. He picked up a bottle of potion with his right hand, shook it, and said to everyone, "Come to me, line up to receive the potion." The warriors of Vostronia looked at the tall giant with confusion. If they hadn't known that Mikkel, who wore a black robe and resembled the Lord, was the chief apothecary, they would have suspected him of being a fraudulent quack. They were on the path to heaven. What help could drinking a potion be? Although it cannot change your physical qualities, it can alleviate rejection reactions. This is a unique ability bestowed upon me by the Lord. Upon hearing this, the candidates no longer had any doubts. They formed neat lines, took the potion from the apothecary's hand, and drank it down. After the apothecary distributed potions to all the candidates, he spoke. "You will immediately proceed to the operating room and begin the modification surgery." With that, the chief apothecary raised his control staff and aimed it at a white alloy metal door. Runes flickered, the door opened, and the candidates filed out. Mikkel also quickly walked down to the operating room. He took a data pad from his attendant and slid his finger to review the data. Open black lens bracket. Since I developed a potion to alleviate rejection reactions, the success rate of surgeries has increased by 5.2%. However, the emergency potion was not as effective, the death rate only decreased by 1.4%. This is the limitation of the apothecary. In this regard, I am not as good as the physician. Close black lens bracket. As the apothecary pondered, he began to inspect the operating chambers. He had just passed operating chamber 4 when he noticed the patient undergoing modification trembling. The apothecary immediately activated his psychic vision, determining the exact location before the detection equipment. The prosthetic arm on his back immediately extended towards the patient, beginning the rescue. In operating chamber 16, physician Malina Scala, after finishing her surgery, walked out of the mountain along the passage, mounted an airship, and flew towards Farm 5. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.